live? It could be. It could be that we're
Hopefully,
live.
yeah. Yeah. I think we are live. Give us 1 second.
Okay, brilliant.
Well, my one hasn't gone live yet. 1 second. Maybe I'm behind.
Yeah, it might just be taking its sweet time to do the
Oh,
thing.
now it's clipping. Yeah, there we go. It just wants to do ads first. But there's no one in my chat yet, so it's grand. Oh, there's 3 people now suddenly gone in. That's grand.
That's
So I
that's
must have popped up in the notification.
yeah. Those ads are how we make our money. So, although not much, people are always surprised when I tell them just how little we creators get from those YouTube ads. Like we get nothing
Yeah.
really. I think
What's
I
well?
think
What I need to be doing next is annoying the sponsorship.
yeah, it's all about the
Yeah.
sponsor. The problem is that I don't believe in just I do not want to have to sell out, so I don't want to be hawking Audi cars or something, a product I don't believe in and don't use.
Yeah.
But all of the artisans, all of the people who make replica medieval items, they don't have advertising budgets really.
Yeah.
So, you can't really, the chances of us getting sponsors who are actually, medieval people who produce quality medieval goods, replica goods, is pretty slim because they just don't, they don't have multi-million-dollar advertising budgets. They have like a
Yeah.
$20 advertising budget. So,
No, Jim O'Neill, we were having technical problems as usual. You know
yeah,
yourself, Jim. It's a case of, we're not up to the standard of 1984, where you can just get
yeah,
something and smash it on the floor and expect it to still work. Everything seems to
yeah,
be just delicate and breaks like no tomorrow. That's the
yeah,
joys of it.
exactly. And as Philip and I have often said, we don't study medieval history because we love modern technology. That's not,
It's a fact. Jesus.
that is not why we do this at all.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I suppose
So yeah, we've got, there's been a lot of buzz. There's been a lot of news coming out lately. For first of all, I guess I should say welcome and good morning and good afternoon and good evening. um, I am the creative Contessa, and this is Philip from Irish Medieval History, and we are here to talk about the medieval buzz and things that have been buzzing in the medieval history world, and a lot has been happening lately as the political situation heats up.
Oh,
That
stop.
unfortunately has reflected back into our little happy nook of history, hasn't it?
Yeah, big time. We'll talk about more of that later, and hopefully try to avoid it because our main topic today, which is going to be that they found West African DNA in 2 people during the early medieval
Yep,
period in England.
in
From
England.
West
Yep.
Africa as well. So it's not even like with North Africa, we already know there's a lot of interaction there within the Mediterranean Sea, surprise and shock. I know that there's radical red people, as I call them, that believe that Africa didn't exist. But that's how they talk. They're just like, you have England and then Europe that behaves like England. It's, oh my
Yeah,
God.
it's
And that's
it
people's
is
interpretation. Yeah.
it
And
is it is crazy. It's like, what do you mean? Why is it you think that the world was somehow disconnected?
mm,
Like there's a wall somehow that runs right through the Mediterranean and through the gates of Hercules, and that there's no movement or interaction between Africa and Europe.
yeah.
It's a really bizarre thought. And
But the,
and I've seen some people invest some real emotion into this topic.
yeah.
Um, and it's weird. Like, it's, for me as a historian,
Mm,
I try to be as dispassionate as I can about my subject so that
yeah.
I maybe learn the actual facts instead of informing things I wish were true. And
Mm,
yeah, sometimes I'm disappointed when I learn that what I hoped would be the historical reality wasn't.
mm.
But I just accept it and I move on. But there's a
Yeah,
lot of people who can't do that.
they can't. And the problem is, as you pointed out at the very start, is everyone's getting very political again. So when people are looking at medieval history, they're trying to get a propaganda agenda out of it. And I
Yep.
did notice from a political stance very early on when this African story broke out we did have people from a bitch about the red color side, a bitch about the radical blue color side as well, that are trying to promote that, pretty much everybody was black, when that's not the
Right.
case either.
Yeah.
And it's trying to get, it's trying to get the actual reality of what's happened here. And it is exciting because when they were looking through the graves and stuff, they looked through the graves of Updown. And this one I'm going to butcher, by the way. I keep practicing this, and because it's an Anglo-Saxon name of an area.
Oh God,
in
no,
England. Am I broke out of it? I don't know which way that one's gone. Oh no.
Okay, yeah, my phone, my I don't know why, but my device has decided that streaming doesn't count as an activity, and so it keeps trying to turn itself off.
Oh no. Yeah, that's not good. If my one's going okay, let me have a check. I want to see if my one's breaking up or not. My one might be daft as well. I don't know if people can see me or hear me. But if everyone can see me and hear me, hey Jim, how you keeping? How you doing? Probably talking to myself. Give me a second there. I took the wrapper off this, so now I can use it. Where is it gone? Gone. No, I'm still visible actually. Regardless, I'll just keep waffling for the next 2 hours.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh no, it's back.
Hopefully we're back. Yeah. Okay. So apparently this is why I don't like using my phone for this kind of stuff. Because I had to turn off the adaptive battery settings so that it will stop trying to turn it off, because apparently this morning live streaming does not count as an activity for my phone. So it keeps trying to shut the screen off. Yeah. It shuts the screen off, it shuts the stream off. So yeah. God, I just want to go live in my 15th century village and make stuff. Why does my life have to be this way?
Yeah. Modern technology, huh? The joys of it. And then every time it breaks, it wants you to spend another, £1,000? Because, I could just chuck £1,000 at everything. That's how it works these days.
No problem. No problem.
I think that's what Elon Musk was telling us. It's like, it's okay. Just use your cake. Throw cakes at everything. Why don't you have cake? Why don't you eat cake?
That's right. Enjoy your rich person's cake. Yeah. So this news article actually came out it broke in August, right? This news of the West African DNA found in a 7th century graveyard, right? Really exciting.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? The one that's called Updown, which is very close to London, by the way. It's just a tip off. If you go to London and then just go east of London to that edge, just before you hop over to, the Netherlands, it's a town called Updown, right? So they went to the monastic settlement there. And interesting as well, from my perspective, in that monastic settlement, they found bones with Irish DNA in it as well. So there is Irish people there as well in the 7th century. And for me, I actually thought it was kind of shocking, because it's the southern part of England. If it was the northern part of England during the golden age of Ireland, I'd be like, oh, well, there's no shock there because of the constant movement between the Enale monastic settlements in the north of Ireland, because they're the dynasty of the Enale dominate Ireland at the time, and their main monastic areas are in the north of Ireland.
Right.
So it wouldn't surprise, and at this point, the Irish have set up places like Lindisfarne. They've set up a whole load of monastic settlements in the Northumberland. So I expect the old Vikings. But they've all set up monastic settlements in all those areas, right? So I wouldn't be surprised there. But the fact it happened in the south of England, and when the archaeologists were digging there, they were actually expecting to find Irish DNA, was actually a bit of a surprise to me. So furthermore, when they found someone with a hint of African DNA in them, I don't think it was their actual father. I think it was like their grandfather or something had African DNA, wasn't it?
Right. It was like I think it was through the maternal line.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, so it was clearly that this person was recently descended from, which is even more interesting because
Mm,
that shows that there was a, not just that there were, two Africans, a man and a woman who happened to be there, right? Like they intermixed with the
yeah.
local people. that
Mm,
is that is really exciting. And like you said, they found the Irish DNA, but the pottery was also interesting. They found the people were buried with Gallic pottery from Gaul, from
mm,
France. So,
yeah.
you've got Irish people of really recent West African descent plus Gaulish pottery. It's so international. 7th century England, no one thinks of 7th century England and thinks, wow, what an international place it must have been. But it was.
Yeah, that's why it's so shocking to us because we have the depiction, and it's literally branded as the Dark Age in Anglo-Saxon England. That the Roman Empire has collapsed. The Anglo-Saxons have come in as
Right.
mercenaries. They've usurped the Roman Britons, forced the
Yeah.
Roman Britons to live out in Wales, and these
Right.
people are practically living in mud huts. These are backwards German savages. What would they know
Right.
about civilization? And yet now we have towns that are revealing, according to the bones, that are very, very mixed, that may have had, Irish monks coming in, perhaps Irish traders. We're also seeing traders in, as you said there, trade coming in from Gaul. But the question is, where does this male DNA come from? From West Africa, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's very clearly West Africa. So I would like to emphasize that, so people are clear that when we say Western African DNA or we say Indonesian DNA, no matter what, when you're talking about geographical DNA, they're talking about markers in the
Mm.
DNA that are prevalent in certain populations in certain parts of the world. Just so everyone is clear, there isn't a West African gene.
Yeah,
There
I
isn't
just
an
don't know the name of
Indonesian, right?
it.
These are markers that are much more prevalent in populations in specific geographic regions. So, obviously there's room for debate. Okay.
Mm,
These are West African markers. Does that mean they were West African or not? Right. So there is some room for a debate. I don't want to overstate, I don't want to overinterpret the
yeah.
evidence is I guess my point. Yeah. So
Uh, Toto Pei, you have a meme there on the Mixing Timeline Freaks. Could you elaborate on that one as well? Because I guarantee that's probably a funny joke for us.
yeah,
Because I,
the,
I
the
haven't I haven't
mixing.
seen that medieval joke yet.
Traveling troops and stragglers. So the suggestion is maybe that they were traveling troops and stragglers. So
Oh
m-
yeah, yeah.
maybe, but in the 7th century, we don't really traveling troops in 7th century post Justinian plague Europe are not really much of a thing.
Mm,
So just to everyone, for those of you who are not tracking, there is the first like massive pandemic that is recorded in history is actually the Justinian plague in the 6th through the 7th century. It kills 90% of Europe's population.
mm,
It's bigger than the Black Death in terms of the percentage of the population it kills. And that's the event that actually brings ancient Roman technology and infrastructure down,
mm,
because after 90, and we know the Justinian plague. We have found the Justinian plague in graves all the way up into England and I think Ireland,
oh
all the
yeah.
way into Central Asia. So we know that this thing killed a large swath of the population. And so you go from having critical mass to operate the aqueducts and the baths and the plumbing and keep the roads paved, keep the lights on. And then
Mm,
after the Justinian plague, no, it's not there anymore. There's no more critical mass to maintain all of this ancient Roman, late antiquity technology.
mm,
That's actually when we enter a sort of dark age.
yeah.
Um, Literally dark because like people are dying in droves. So I have not read much about traveling troops or performers. I have not found evidence of that as a phenomenon in the 7th century
Yeah.
in England because they're still reeling from the Justinian plague at that point.
Yeah. Because even in Ireland, they reckon that's why they switched. So before the Justinian plague, a lot of people lived in those sort of for the most part, them kind of Bronze Age Celtic fortifications that you
Mm,
guys know from the TV. There is fortifications like in the Rock of Cashel, which is very Roman style. It's more of a Hiberno Roman. style fort that you can see in the Rock of Cashel. Even the name Cashel is a huge indicator that
Oh,
this is a
Castell. Is it from?
that's the
Yeah,
one. That's the
yeah,
nail on the head. So
yeah.
we do have kind of Hiberno Roman style fortifications in Ireland because Ireland is now going into a golden age.
Mm.
However, what is very shocking with the Justinian plague that we can see recorded in the Annals of Ulster is there's like a massive hiccup that happens because the plague comes in and smashes around the place.
It does.
Diarmid MacCurbal, who is the High King of Ireland at the time in Irish, the Riaroic, which basically means he's the man with the biggest stick on the island. You have a bunch of war bands, and basically everybody's just like, hey, let's follow this guy. He's kind of got the biggest stick on the island. So you have a
Fair.
word that reflects, yeah, it's the early medieval period, you know.
Fair.
We just go around following the guy with the biggest stick, and that word is the word Riaroic, which if we were to directly translate it, it would pretty much mean, you know, High King, man with the biggest stick. And at the time, that was Diarmid MacCurbal. And the problem is that with this kind of style of governance, it's a case of you can easily be usurped. It's not like in England where there's, you know, a centralized monarch, and you know that God has, both by his bloodline and the fact that God has literally put him there, he's somewhat secure to a certain degree, you know. Obviously, we see a lot of usurpation in medieval England much later on, but there's a certain level of security there with a centralized king. That's not the case in Ireland. When you have a plague like the Justinian plague that, kicks off, people are like, well, maybe he shouldn't have the biggest stick. Maybe this is God's way of saying you shouldn't have the biggest stick, buddy.
Right.
So he's, especially when he's actually a pagan, he's not even a Christian yet, right?
Wow. Okay.
This plague, actually, funny enough, it may be one of the reasons why, plus with the rise of Christianity, maybe why he switched over to Christianity, because he's actually the last pagan king, which means he switches over to Christianity. And what's interesting is that as he's switching over to Christianity, which may be the fear of the pagans looking at him going, maybe we should sacrifice you to one of the pagan gods, which, by the way, is a huge thing in Ireland. You can find that with the bog bodies, where they sacrifice the person by the neck and then cut off their nipples to, disqualify them as king, and then chuck them into a bog. Diarmid MacCurbal is probably thinking to himself, yeah, I don't want to be sacrificed. So he very quickly
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Look, I'm Christian. We don't do that anymore.
Exactly. So himself and St. Kieran are just like, because St. Kieran suddenly appears and goes, I have a great idea, right? What we could do is start building these things called monastic settlements, and they can replace the cities, right? So they go around in the middle of Ireland. They build, Clonmacnoise, and then they have a big ceremony to convert Diarmid MacCurbal from paganism to Christianity, and they erect a cross. And on the cross, you can see Diarmid MacCurbal holding St. Patrick's stick on one side, and St. Kieran is holding it on the other one. And they're basically saying, hey, look, God said it's okay. Don't sacrifice me. And what they do as well is, so the monastic settlements are going to be assembly points. It's where everyone comes together. And because this plague is ravaging around the place, we'll leave all these big Bronze Age settlements that we've been living for, there for about 3,000 years or so. We'll just leave them. We'll abandon them, right?
Right.
And instead, we're going to live in small little Irish ring forts. So what you see is that pretty much, the equivalent of an Irish clan, which is called a tuat, which directly translates to a tribe, but I don't really use a tribe too much. I use clan instead.
That comes with so many connotations that lead people to misunderstand, right?
Yeah.
Language is complicated, and unfortunately, the Irish word, the old Irish word, has very specific dimensions that the modern English, none of the modern English words really encapsulate fully,
Yeah. So most of the time, I actually, when people say tuat, I say clan, although the direct word tuat is actually tribe. But that's because, as you know yourself, it goes back to the old Bronze Age tribes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I say clan, and it's not a clan as in a European style. It's more of an Irish style, which is kin group, which is linked through marriage, marriage alliance, hostages, and adoption. So when you go into someone's ring fort, you're not just going to see a family. The family is going to be mixed with people from all different families that are taken as hostages to make sure, the other ring fort down the road does what they're told to do.
Right.
And you take a tribute of cattle as well from them as well. So you take hostages. You also adopt your children up to, a clan that you trust. You're saying, I like you so much, you can have my child and I take your child, so
Right.
it's very mixed
Yeah.
there as well. And of
In
course,
in English, we call that in the medieval system, we call that fostering, and it sounds, completely benign and friendly. But there is definitely an aspect of, I have your child, you
yeah,
have my child, so ...
yeah. Don't rebel. But regardless, what happens then is that you have all these ring forts dotted around the place. So instead of having just one big, massive Bronze Age, big, massive fortification where everybody's there and everybody gets the plague all at once and we're all wiped out.
Right.
The new plan is we have, and this is allegedly the theory, we have ring forts all over the place. So if one ring fort or one clan gets the plague, that's it. They keep the plague to themselves and no one else gets it in that area. So that's the effect that the Justinian plague has in Ireland, especially going into its golden age. That's why, like if you take Japan, for example, they have big, massive cities. Like in this era, it's so interesting because at the same time in the 6th century, Japan also gets the idea of cities, civilized. We'll start building cities. But it's so funny because Japan is not a warring state yet. It's still actually really peaceful. And you can tell that because when they build walls, they're only building walls as a ceremonial thing to say, this is the civilized spot where I live, and this is nature. They're not built, like they're literally just small little garden wall. Like they're tiny, like they're only a leaf or something.
It's vestigial, it's symbolic.
Yeah, that's 100% it. And which is so funny. So you see this big, massive cities appearing just up around where my wife is actually from, up around the Nagoya area. You see all these cities starting to appear up around there. Compared to Ireland, which is terrified of the Justinian plague. So instead of building big, massive cities, we just start erecting ring forts left, right, and center. So they're just popping up everywhere in Ireland. And then in the center of spots, so people can come together for like Sunday Mass or huge assemblies. Then you go over to the church area, the monastic settlement. So in the early medieval period, that's where the main assemblies happened. And that's where people would plan what they would do for the week.
It's funny. So one of the comments was from Jim that he's never even heard of this plague. Right.
Yeah.
So many people have not heard of this plague. It's unbelievable. It's a pivotal. It is the thing that actually triggers the Dark Ages, the Dark Age, which is much more shortly lived than people think it is. But I would say that if there's any time in European history post sort of the last 2,000 years in European history where there's a dark age, well, it's now. We're entering a dark age, but also during and right after the Justinian plague. Yeah, it's a dark time, and it's
for sure.
And so finding these that makes it more interesting to me that it's the 7th century grave that has these, bringing it full circle, that has these bodies with West African DNA in the wake of the Justinian plague, to me is even more remarkable.
Yeah.
Because that shows that despite the horror and the death that was happening everywhere, there were still trade routes, right?
Yeah.
Traveling was still happening. People were still going places and transporting goods, making and selling wares across waters. In the case of the Gaulish pottery that was found with those graves.
Oh, huge time, because that's one of the leading theories, because West Africa at the time is also having a golden age as well. Like these are literally referred to as the golden kingdoms. And this is where it does get exciting, because it's not like you can just hop on a boat from West Africa and then just suddenly appear in England. I know there's some people out there with agendas are trying to make out like, West Africa was easy to, get to. No, don't get me wrong. Africa does exist. It's on the map. I know there's some people then on the radical other side of the political thing that just are like, Africa, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, that's right.
It does. Yeah, it does. It was a myth. Exist. It does actually exist, but it's not easy to get to. First and foremost, like from a West African perspective, it's always a case of, why would you go to cold, dark age England when you can live in nice, comfortable, warm, golden age Africa? Like, why would you do that? That's your
Yeah.
first opening question before you even venture off. So let's say, oh, well, I've got all this gold here, I've got all this silver, and I've got other resources that I need to trade with the wider world to make even more money. So what I'll do is I'll head up north, and you continue heading up north until you get to the northern realms. Okay. The thing is that from that point, you could just trade up all your goods and then just go home. Right. So
Right.
then you're into the question of, why would I venture up again? Now, as you said there, this could be because if you're going to like gamble billions in trade, right? Well, the equivalent today is billions in trade.
Right.
Perhaps maybe you want to see if the trade is fully connected. You personally get there so you can see personally if it's all connected up. And that could be some historians and academics, one of which is, I think it was evolution.net, was arguing the fact that it was most likely traders going up to reconnect our trade links again, which to me kind of makes sense that they would, especially a man who gets up to North Africa, sees there's a bit of damage there, wants to see what the case is, even have a word with the traders themselves, and then goes into the Mediterranean, and from there gets a boat up past the Iberian Peninsula. I think it's the Caliphate is pushing into the Iberian Peninsula at that point as well, which would have made trade easier.
Yeah, so the Caliphate gets there. This is in the 8th century. So they come in like the early 8th century is when they push up. So in the 7th century, that's the 7th century is when the Caliphate is spreading across North Africa, but they don't push up into Spain until the early 8th century. So, but there's still Visigoths there. The Visigoth kingdom is there and doing its thing, trying to recover from the Justinian plague like everyone else.
Trying to. But I suppose
with
traders coming in with fresh goods and more money to spend, it would have been seen as a very delightful thing to do. Even if this guy was, perhaps a full-on alien to them, it probably was, seen as a pretty good thing. Plus, at that stage, it's not like they're entirely ignorant. They would have known from Latin text and Latin teachings of people from the West African area. So it's not like they're dealing with a complete alien when you have someone from West Africa suddenly appearing, trying to reconnect all these trade goods in again, from the Iberian Peninsula.
Yeah, that's the thing people don't understand about the Western Roman Empire, or the Roman Empire in general, is that the Roman army purposefully moved peoples. So if they had soldiers in North Africa who were North African, they would purposefully take their whole unit and deploy them to a different part of the empire, so that you maximize different abilities, but also minimize the ability for, say, a military unit to take advantage of local family connections and try to hijack some part of the government. So, and there were absolutely North African Romans who were, what we might call Berber now, or a variety of other ethnic groups. And we do know that there were sub-Saharan Africans in the Roman army.
Yeah.
So, there's this idea that Europeans would have been, shocked and amazed by a person with dark skin, not unless they were born on an island in the middle of, the North Sea and had never seen other humans before.
Yeah. Which you do, you can't fully say, as the example you pointed out there didn't happen, because we do have examples of that also happening as well.
Sure.
As Metatron had pointed out, there was an emperor that was shocked to see a West African. Was he stationed? Maybe you can correct me on this one. I think the emperor was in North Africa or something, and he's seen a West African man for the first time, and he was just shocked. He was just like, what the hell? Because he'd never seen one before. So there is examples of people suddenly bumping into someone from West Africa and their brains not being able to digest it. So I'm not saying that everyone was fully, on board with, their brains could fully digest someone from West Africa. But at the same time, we do have people that would see someone from West Africa and be like, oh, okay. So how are you keeping?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same thing today. There are, did I ever tell you the story? My ex-husband, when he was in basic training, he actually had, this was back in the 80s, he actually had a one part of his cadre, his cohort, was one of the gentlemen was from Appalachia.
Yeah.
Appalachia is rural eastern mountains of the United States.
Mm.
And this boy, his first pair of boots, and he was a boy, he was like 17 when he enlisted. His
Yeah.
first pair of boots that he'd ever owned, he got from the army.
Yeah.
And there was, they were standing in formation one day, and this young man kept like craning his neck and looking down the line and looking down the line and looking down the line. And then he did the unthinkable. He broke formation and he walked down, and the drill sergeant was so shocked that he didn't do what drill sergeants used to do, which would have made him do like 3,000 push-ups, right?
Yeah.
He watched as this boy walked down the line, approached a black man who was also one of the recruits, walked up to him. He actually, and with no hint of racism, genuine curiosity, ran his finger down this man's cheek and looked at his fingers in amazement that the color from his skin did not come off. And then he went back to his slot in line, and everyone was so shocked that no one did anything. Like the drill sergeant should have been issuing 1,000,000 push-ups. You know, there should have been a fence, but this boy was so isolated from such a rural, non-electrified part of Appalachia that he had never seen a black man before basic training. So even in the modern world, there are people who are amazed by differences in skin tone. So yeah, I certainly am not suggesting, wow, look at those numbers go up. The algorithm's listening, Philip. We just doubled our viewership, literally, as I talked about that. So my point is, though, that I would never make this statement. It would be a false statement for me to say that everyone in 7th century Europe knew about Black people or that there were Black people. No, of course not. But also, you definitely cannot say that no one knew about sub-Saharan Africa or sub-Saharan Africans. You know, it's there. It's in the literature that they even have, right? They talk. There are monks who are copying all these texts. They knew because they were copying all these histories from Rome, right?
Yeah. God, I was going to say something. Oh yeah, I was the same as well. I was kind of lucky though, because I was when I was a child, I was about 7 years of age, and I went to an Irish school. And in the Irish school, there was a girl from Jamaica there. I think it was her dad was Irish, but her mother was, because she was Jamaican, she was a mixture of both Irish and I know, one of the original plantationers. And so she was a mixed child, and my brain, I was only 6 years of age. My brain didn't notice that she was a different color whatsoever. It wasn't until I was much older that my brain was like, oh, you're Jamaican, because she had an Irish accent, because she was a baba, only a baby and stuff. And it wasn't until years later that my brain was just like, you're not the same color. My brain just, little babies are 5, like, you just, as different hair types and stuff, your brain just doesn't pick up on different skin colors until later
it doesn't
on.
care.
Yeah. And I'm not the only one. I remember it was to say, I was talking to a kid from, not a kid from New York, Yusuke. He's about the same age as myself, and he lives in Tokyo. But he did, when he was a child, he grew up in New York. That's why he's got a very good North Atlantic accent, very neutral accent in many ways. But you can tell it's a nice upper class New York boy.
Right.
Although his parents are, he's born in Tokyo, and his parents are from Tokyo as well. But when he was a child, purposely he was brought to New York so he could have that beautiful English accent on him. And
wait, to have the beautiful New York accent.
Well,
clearly you're talking about
words,
the upper.
No, not mine.
You're talking about the upper crust of New York society, not the hardcore working class New York accent.
No offense to anybody in the comment section there. We do love you, but no. His parents purposely put him up in a very expensive upper class school.
Yes.
Yusuke, what was it called? When he was a baby, his brain just did not register different colors and stuff, different skin colors and stuff. He just, because they were all upper class people from India, different various places in North Africa, different places in South
Koreans
America,
too. A lot of my
Koreans,
friends
yeah.
send their kids to those schools. Yeah.
Yeah. So he purposely was very, very neutral. So his brain didn't register. It wasn't until he was 18 and went back to Japan and noticed how people were interacting with strangers that were coming
Mm,
into the community. His brain was like, that's the point where he was like, wait, it's not normal to be mixing with people. What's going on here? It's
right.
just for him, it was very, very funny. And when he said that to me, I was like, yeah, that's how it was for me and that Jamaican girl. Like I used to sit next to that Jamaican girl and talk away to her for ages, and little 5-year-old Philip just did not register. It's same again. It's not until I went to England and stuff, and people were talking about outsiders that my brain was just like, "Oh, we have to treat outsiders differently." Okay, right, gotcha.
Yeah. And also why? Yeah. It
Yeah.
it's there's a good comment here from Jim. He says, I thought we all started out humans as dark skinned, and as we spread across the world in the climate change, it changed the colors of our skin. Jim, that is my
Yeah,
understanding as well, is that
yeah,
it's all a question of adaptations based on sunlight, as far as I understand, and our ability to absorb or to absorb more sun to produce more vitamin D.
mm,
White people like me, for instance,
yeah,
in the northern climates where the sun is weaker
mm,
and less prevalent, especially in the winter, versus people from the equatorial regions where there's more sunlight and you don't need as much sun to produce the vitamin D you need to survive. So the skin, is darker and therefore absorbs less of it.
yeah,
So that's my understanding as well. And so yeah, we all started off not like me.
yeah. Because it's funny because we had that recent thing that came out in Ireland and it was the same thing in England where the original 1 second, then the problem is the media, instead of explaining it properly, went off
Yeah,
a complete
yeah.
propaganda thing. But it was when it came out that I can't remember what name they gave it to the person, but they
Are you talking about
proved
Cheddar Man?
that's the one
Cheddar Man.
where
Yeah,
his
Cheddar
skin
Man.
wasn't milky pale. They were pointing
Right.
out that his skin was darker. It wasn't milky pale. Oh my god! To be honest with you, I thought that was common sense. I thought that people knew that we had traveled. And the biggest one being, if you even read the opening chapters to the Bible, the thing is of us traveling and our pigments slowly changing over time. I thought that was explained in the Bible. I remember being in church and the priest explaining, "Oh, we came from the Middle East or wherever the Bible claims we came from," and then we kind of went out from there. I think it's the border between Africa and the Middle East. I around the Kenya area or something like that. That's what the priest was explaining to us when I was, I think, about 7 years of age or something. And then we went out from there, and our skin would have changed over time. Like I thought that was taught to everybody on Sunday Mass. So when people were just like, what? Our skin changed when we got to Ireland. I was just like, what? I thought everybody knew that from the Bible. Like, what the hell's going on here? Like, um,
Apparently, they didn't have everyone didn't have your erudite priest growing up.
yeah, exactly. What the hell? Because I was even my own comments, because obviously this pops up a lot, because in medieval text, and once again, this goes back to the Golden Age of Ireland, the Irish go and rewrite the Bible, and they write the Bible to include themselves in the Bible, and in the Irish version of the Bible, the
As one
Irish,
does.
yeah, why not? It's called the Book of Invasions, and it starts us off with us saying, waving goodbye to Moses and
Right,
saying,
right.
"Okay, see you, Moses." And then instead of going from Turkey to France and then over to Ireland, it's a case of us going from, which is actually, weirdly enough, actually not half incorrect, because we did actually go from North Africa to the Iberian Peninsula, modern day Spain, and then from Spain up to Brittany, and from Brittany over to Ireland. So it's actually not that bad. It was actually what's it called, pretty accurate. But regardless, my main point being is that skin would have changed as we were moving through the sun and stuff. Skin would have shifted and changed. I thought that was
Right.
common sense, but I don't know, some
You
people
you
just didn't
you
get the
would you
memo.
would think so, but
Yeah,
there are many people who also think that Jesus was blonde-haired and blue-eyed and as pale as I am. So,
yeah.
and
So
those same people also refuse to believe that he was Jewish and a Jewish rabbi,
yeah.
no less. So.
Well, You see, that's where the fun comes in, because then on top of that as well, he was a branch of Judaism as well. So that conversation actually gets very, very interesting. But I don't want to
Yep.
go on the conspiracy side of things and then get myself in trouble because I don't specialize in
Yeah.
theologians.
Oh,
So I
you're
find
are
it
you
interesting.
you're talking about that he was in a scene, one of the rebel part of, hypothetically, maybe part of the rebel, one
I
of the
didn't
rebel
hear about
groups.
that. I want to know about that one then.
Oh,
Are we
yeah.
allowed to talk about that, or will we get into
Are we
trouble?
allowed? I don't know.
I
Let's
don't
see
know
what
either.
happens to the algorithm.
But it's not that. It's because you see, I don't like having. I don't mind getting into conversations where I get into trouble if I know what I'm talking about, you know. But
Yeah.
I'm not a theologian, so I'll probably get into trouble for that one and told off for being inaccurate. So, it's one thing to die on a hill where you know you're right. It's another thing to die on a hill where you don't know if it's the right hill or not, you know.
Oh,
Wasn't he
that
supposed to be
is
on this hill?
so true, right? It's just
But yeah, where was I go? Oh yeah. But when I talk to people that are ignorant to the Book of Invasions and the Bible, and they're ignorant to just
Mm.
basic science, then I'm like, okay, so where do you think Irish people come from? And they're like, oh, we come from Connacht. We come from the west of Ireland. And I'm like, oh my God. So you think we actually emerged out like a potato? And they're like, yeah, like potato people. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ.
the potato people. We're the potato people.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh my God. Like this is where
Ach du meine Güte.
you're talking to people that are ignorant to the Bible, ignorant to the Irish literature, and quite literally believe that that's the kind of people you're having conversations with, you know?
Potato
Um,
people. I have to confess, I've never heard that term. We are the potato people. That's
mm,
that's brilliant.
that's Kevin taking a
Also,
piss there, by the way.
oh wait, which Kevin?
Kevin there is Jesus was blonde and half
Oh,
Islander. Yeah,
got
he's
it,
taking
got
a
it,
piss.
got it, got
He
it.
does
Yeah,
that.
right. Yeah. Okay. Also, it's good to know that's how that name is pronounced.
Yeah. He explained it yesterday because my Munster Irish is terrible. And it was Jim O'Neill yesterday on my live stream. Jim O'Neill was the one who was brave enough to turn around and say, for the life of me, I cannot pronounce your name in Irish. And he was just like, oh, it's just Kevin, Jim. And I was like, oh, right. Gotcha.
Thank God someone fixed it. Yeah. Yeah, it's
um,
these assumptions that everyone understands these basic concepts is it's sad, but this is the kind of ignorance we're fighting against, you and I specifically, that we're trying to counter these all of these narratives that are just unfactual and absolutely the Irish came from Disney World.
yeah,
Yep,
I was just looking at
they
that going, okay.
totally did. Darby O'Gill
Florida.
and the Little People. There's a movie for you. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. You can
Oh,
watch Sean Connery slapping a woman and getting away with it. It was a different time.
they were the days. Yeah, people keep telling me to watch that one as well because I've seen bits and pieces because it was the same with the other famous Irish American movie. Oh, what was it called again? Um, oh my God, it's over my head because it's funny because it's actually filmed up around the Mallow region and stuff, and it's out of my head right now. And it was, I think it was funded by Disney as well, and it's literally out of my head. One second. See, I've got the
Well,
whole
there's
Google machine.
National Velvet, I think, was also in Ireland, wasn't it?
Yeah, it could be. I should watch all these movies.
That's
Movie. One
okay.
second. 1960. I went 1960. Oh no. No, not Molly Maguire.
No, no, Molly Maguire would
It's
take
like
place in the
The
U.S.
Quiet Man. That's the one. You've heard of The Quiet Man, haven't you?
I have not, actually, which is
Ooh.
unusual because normally
It's a
I hear things.
huge Irish American movie. No, it's funny because every single person makes fun of it because everybody's got a really bad Irish American. It's a bunch of Irish Americans trying to do my accent,
Accents,
basically.
right?
Yeah. And it's so like the accents are so bad. It's the
It
worst accents
Darby
ever.
O'Gill and the Little People is pretty equally bad.
Yeah.
Of course, Sean Connery has an actual like Scottish accent, so
Yeah.
uh, him trying
Which
to
makes
do
it
the
even better.
Irish version of it is really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
But they had, yeah, that's right. It's Katie O'Brien, wasn't
Yeah.
it? She was the famous actress back in the
Yep.
day. What was her accent like? I can't remember what her
It's pretty heavy.
Irish accent was
Her
like.
it's heavy,
All
but
right.
honestly, I don't know if that's her real accent or if they told her. It wouldn't surprise me if they told her, "Well, you don't sound Irish enough, so
Oh yeah,
brogue it up,
the old
baby,
plastic patty
brogue it
accent.
up."
Oh,
You know, those
Disney World is the promised
the Disney
land.
World is the promised land.
Oh my God, we're gonna get into trouble now.
Oh, yes, and Jim, it is absolutely true that some of the letters in the Irish alphabet are pronounced the same as they are in the US. Yeah. Like
Oh,
thorn, like you Irishmen, you cannot handle thorn at all, the TH sound. You just
corn,
can't do it. You just
corn,
it's not
corn.
so many of my Irish friends can't say three. They say tree, right? They can't,
Stop it.
it's like,
My favorite, my favorite is definitely turd because I
yeah,
like say
you
it the
say
way I
turd.
normally do. And yeah, and then suddenly people will put up like because you see, there's no Irish king that has a third on it because we normally move on to a different king by then, or a different dynasty is taken over. So we put in, either Christian names or we chuck on some of their dynasty names. But over in England, they have the likes of Richard the
Yeah.
Third or Edward the Third. So anytime I'm using the word third, it's always for English kings. And so it adds to the banter because third is always a shitty king anyway. So like Edward the Third in Ireland, he's the villain. So that's grand, chucking a third there. And it's the same thing, even worse again with Richard the Third. Yeah, chuck a third in there. So it adds to the banter. So sometimes I'll wake up because I do these things before I go to sleep. And I'll wake up and I'll have a load of poo emojis on
Oh my God,
That's the banter. Like,
that's
what am I supposed
that's
to do?
fantastic. I once one of my he's actually from the Dublin area, but he
Mm.
we were at a medieval reenactment event together in camp, and I said to him, you don't pronounce the th sound. He said, yes, I do. And I said, really? Okay, say three. And he said, tree. Okay, I said, okay, now, now pronounce tree. And he said, tree. And he said, see, there's a difference. I said, there is not a difference between.
There is a difference. I don't know what you're talking
You
about.
are putting me
A lot
on,
of you
sir.
people with your language. It's not my fault you can't understand Hiberno English, as they call it.
Hiberno English. That's right. My
Mm.
ear is apparently not sophisticated enough to distinguish between your
Yeah,
delicate
such
pronunciation.
such a true usage of the accent. There's an argument coming out that the Irish, because of their their accent with their Hiberno English, it's the real way of pronouncing things because it's more closer to how people would have spoken during the medieval period compared to the Americans and the modern day English. Because in the 1800s, everybody was retrained. Well, the Americans and
Mm.
the English were retrained on how to pronounce everything compared to in Ireland where that never happened. So they have more of the true accents and stuff because they do believe that originally in medieval England people would have had much more of a distinct accent
Yeah,
than they would have
it's
today.
Middle English, rather Middle English, had a much more broguish sound to it. So, like, if you
Mm,
ever hear someone do a reading from Geoffrey Chaucer in the original Middle English, some people say, "Oh, well, that's a
mm,
Scottish accent." I'm like, no, that's a Middle English accent because the
mm.
sounds completely shifted. You're right, in about the 18th century. Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard the same thing as well with the Yorkist accent. Some of the Yorkist accent was more
yeah.
true and would have sounded much more closer to kind of a Kildare Dublin
Mm,
accent than the modern York. No, I'm not saying it was the Dublin or Kildare accent. I'm saying it would have been more closer during the medieval period than the
right.
modern Yorkist accent that we have today. Now, like, I don't think it's the worst because England still has its own distinct accents compared to America, where you still have distinct accents, but it's not as good as it originally was, perhaps. I think anyway.
Yeah, there are some places in the United States that are so well until relatively recently because modern communication has killed this. But up until the 80s, there were places in the United States that were so remote that the English they spoke in terms of pronunciation and in some cases the verb conjugations, etc., was Shakespearean English. So linguists used to go, like there's some islands in the Chesapeake Bay near where I'm from and grew up, where linguists from all over the English speaking world would go to study the history of the English language and its pronunciation by going to these islands and recording the way the old people especially spoke, because it was definitely, it was closer to Shakespeare's English than modern London is. Right. But, of course, now that everyone has smartphones and YouTube and all these wireless forms of communication, I'm pretty certain that that manner of speaking is probably dying out, even in the remote parts of the US.
Yeah, it's wild, especially with the machine AI
Oh, God.
voices are popping up
Ugh.
now. They're quickly clearing up voices and stuff. And the problem is as well is when you have somebody that has a distinct accent, and you then are dealing with someone who's not used to different accents, you get this kind of, can't you speak English? Like, can't you, speak clearly?
Right.
And it's not that person's fault for having an accent. It's the other person's fault for not being used to different accents, that their brain is very narrow. It definitely shows that you need to, leave your bubble, because what's funny
Yeah.
enough, actually, I was bitching about isolated accents and stuff, and it's actually people from isolated areas that actually find it more difficult to communicate with people with different accents, which is quite funny. So if I was to go to New York, unless you're going to a proper cut-off area of New York, where everyone's kind of got the same accent, if you go to a multi-area with different accents and stuff, people from Pakistan, people from North Africa, etc., 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 you're more likely to deal with someone who's used to dealing with different accents compared to somebody who's living in a more isolated
Right.
area, who's not used to different accents. What you get is somebody, huh? Say that again, huh? Like they're not the accent, like, so it's not the person's fault for having a different accent, it's the other person's fault for not getting out into the world and listening to different voices. Maybe just round up a whole load of people who are isolated and send them to India for a few months, get their brain
Right.
especially between the border between Pakistan and India, because of the different frequencies of the different hills and stuff as well. Like, it's stuff like this that
Oh my
produces
God. Are you talking Kashmir now? Are you bringing up Kashmir to trigger the algorithm on purpose?
Really? Does that trigger it? Why is
Oh
that?
God. Are you not familiar with
No.
the conflict zone that is Kashmir, right on the
Oh
border
no,
between
yeah, yeah,
Pakistan and India?
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I sort of was. I'll be cheeky there. I kind of was. Yeah. But that's always good for the algorithm because there's so much history there as well. Like, it's not my fault it causes conflict.
So Kevin has something funny. He says, my buddy couldn't understand anything from the Scottish guys from Sour were saying when I met them in Toronto. They use those Scottish words like canna and dinna.
Oh
I
yeah,
cannot do
yeah.
it. I didn't do it. Right.
They're saying that's just a completely different language again with the Scots English, isn't it? So it's not even like they're
Well, so
speaking English.
right. So there's a difference linguistically between Scots, which is actually a form of English as it
Yeah.
evolved in Scotland, and then just kind of a really heavy accent, right?
Mm.
There's actually a difference between those two. So it could have just been that they were speaking with a really heavy accent, or they could
Yeah.
have been just speaking proper Scots.
Yeah.
The household, the royal household accounts from the royal House of Scotland in the 15th century are actually kept in Scots, not Latin and not English and not Gaelic. It's Scots. So it's very, very close to English of the 15th century. But if you don't know what the equivalents are, you probably wouldn't be able to read the household accounts.
That's probably true. Jim actually asked, so what's the story with your accent as well? What do you label your accent as well? Because Jim says his accent is in your bracket as well.
Yeah, I call people, I think I talk and sound like Rachel as far as accents. Yeah, some people wonder where I'm from because I don't have a purely American accent. I have a unidentifiable, I refer to it as the mid-Atlantic, and I don't mean middle of the East Coast. I mean like the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, because the longer I've lived outside of the US, the more my accent has migrated to something else.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Like my accent as well between Irish people can be quite hard to pin down as well, because I talk with a very kind of I wouldn't say pot because I'm not posh posh, but because my dad was in the military and stuff as well. But it's kind of posh for the region that I'm in because it's like because Cork people are like, "What's the crack, boy? How are you keeping, kid?" It's very kind of
Very whiny, very
yeah,
nasal.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But my accent is between Cork and Limerick, which is all kind of, kind of, what's the crack, boy? How you keeping? People talk like that. And I don't. I talk, me and my dad talk very kind of clear, more like an army officer. Although my dad was an engineer and stuff, he wasn't like army officer. But at the same time, a lot of my family have gone off to university, talk to a lot of doctors and stuff as well. So maybe that's why we kind of have more of an upper class kind of southern accent rather than a kind of what's the crack, kid? How you keeping?
Well,
So I do get
yeah, I don't have the accent of the place where I grew up. There's this
yeah.
thing called the Sussex County accent in my home state, and
Mm,
I do not have it in the least. You
yeah,
would
yeah.
never know I was from Sussex County, so I
Mm.
understand that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I do get that a lot off other Irish people. It's like I can't like I know you're Irish, but I can't exactly pin it. And the problem is the fact that I kind of talk more clear, and also on top of that as well, it is between the Limerick area, which is the southern eastern area, and southern part of Cork. Like so, it's that kind of region. Plus, it's kind of more clear than a lot of people in that area who talk very kind of tick really fast, especially if you go into the Kerry area in
Mm.
between, because I'm from Mallow. They talk insanely fast. When I first moved to Mallow, I went from Cork City to Mallow. And although it's not technically, even people in Cork don't call it a city, they call it a town. It's the people outside of the town that call it a city. But when I moved from, Cork City to the countryside in Mallow, people in Cork talk very clear compared to people in Mallow. They just talk super, super fast. I couldn't understand a single word they were saying. I was just walking around there, just going, "What the hell?"
There's some really great movies, period movies. There's a great movie called Cold Comfort Farm
Mm,
from like the late 90s, and it's a parody, it's a satire, great satire of the classic Gothic novel where that
mm,
takes place in a mysterious house with mysterious goings. And one of the members of this family speaks in a way that on purpose,
mm,
intentionally, that no one can understand. And it's just absolutely hysterical,
mm.
because he's supposed to be like this hard Yorkshire accent, but like so York that even the people from York sure can't understand him. So,
Oh, that's such a good example of what I literally meant right there. Going from, especially when I was going on 8 years of age, like, and I was just walking around so confused. And it's funny because the kids in that area thought I was English. They were like, "You're from England," and I was like, "No, I lived like 30. It's only 30 minutes, by the way, down the road." This is what blew because I remember I had a friend as well who was Irish American, and he did talk in a big American, kind of an American kind of Kerry accent, and what was it called? It blew his mind because the fact of these kids that I was going to school with hadn't seen kind of outsiders before. And so when I was in school, they would be like, "Are you from England?" And stuff. Oh, and that was the other thing as well, is the fact that it was only 30 minutes up the road. And it was the same thing with Kerry as well. Like I remember talking to this kid when I was 8, who was Irish American, and it would take him, he was trying to explain, I couldn't fully understand it at the time. I understand what he was saying now, is the fact that for him to get anywhere, he'd have to travel like 4, 5, 6 hours to get anywhere. And he couldn't understand how 30 minutes down the road, was considered an outsider. Like his mind was just like, he's 30 minutes down the road. Like, how is he an outsider to you people? How are you people calling him English? Like, what the hell? Because we have in Mallow and that whole region around there, there's a word for outsider called blow-ins. So they would, if you weren't from that town or
Loads,
village, they
right,
would call you a blow-in. Oh, well, you're a blow-in. You're not one of us. You're not really,
right.
kind of Irish. You're not kind of one of us and stuff. You're kind of more of a blow-in, um, which is funny because that idea goes all the way back to the medieval period, where if you look at early medieval text, in the Annals of Ulster, they have a word called Gaul Gael, called foreign Irish. And I believe a lot of people these days apply it to the Vikings, but I just see it randomly popping up in like 820 and stuff. So I feel it doesn't just apply to Vikings coming into the area. I believe it applies to other Irish people moving around and stuff. That
Right.
they're like, well, you're more like the city folk. You're not like us country folk. You're foreign Irish. You're foreign Gael. You're not
Right.
one of
Right.
us. Because there's a lot of times if you apply it to the likes of the McSweeneys are Gaelic, like they're Gaelic, but they're referred to and they call them Gaul Gael as well, foreign Irish. They're not one of us.
Yeah, it's funny how you can always tell the stage of a civilization, how centralized government is and how centralized
Mm,
identity is based on what counts as foreign,
yeah.
right? So nowadays, well, you're not from the United States, you're a foreigner, right? But back
Mm,
then, it's like, well, you're from that village over there. Yeah,
yeah.
the one I can see with my eyes. You're a
Yeah.
foreigner.
Yeah. That's so true because it's crazy because then when you go into a city, you could be driving 4 or 5 hours or so inside of a city and it's still New York. Oh, you're still from
Yep,
New York? Yeah, I'm
yep.
from New York too. It's not until you're out, a country person with a big country accent on you, then you're considered, uncivilized. You're not one of us because you're not civilized city people, which is so
Right.
funny because, as you know yourself, that's a Roman idea. The Romans are saying the same thing as well.
Yep.
Because these days many people apply, as you know yourself, apply nationalist terms to the Romans. When they see the Romans saying you're non-Roman, people are looking at it. Oh, he didn't have a Roman passport, and that's not the case at all. It was the fact
No.
that the Romans had seen themselves as civilized city people, especially if you were from Rome. If you were born or even lived in Rome for a certain period of time, you were considered the peak of civilization because it's like saying that you lived in New York for a small period of time and you
Right.
knew which way to stand on an escalator. Once you know to stand on an escalator, peak of civilization there.
That's
You're
right.
one of
Yes, you
us.
are.
You know. The first time I was in London is when I learned how to stand on the right side of an escalator, and I had a
Seriously?
friend.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
yeah, because there's in Dublin, it doesn't really. Dublin claims it's a city, right? And I don't know what Dublin is like now, to be honest with you. But anytime I've gone up to Dublin, I always make fun of people from Dublin because they behave like they're city people, but they're more like townies, to be honest with you, compared to when you go over to London. And I remember when I went over to London, and the first time I learned how to stand on an escalator correctly, my friend from London, he's half Irish, half Jamaican as well, right? And he was so proud of me. He was like, "This is how you be civilized," and I was like, "Geez, what's the big deal here?" Like,
Oh,
yes, you
big,
see,
big, big progress, Philip. Good boy. You get a
I'm now
biscuit.
civilized. Yeah, I love how the comment section is like, "Wait, there's a right way to the escalator." Yeah,
So yes, yes. Okay, I would like to put this out there now because you assholes who stand on the left side of the escalator piss me off so much
you
because
uncivilized barbarians.
because the left side is for the non-lazy people who want to walk up the escalators, and the right side is for the lazy people or the people who can't, in fairness,
Mm.
who don't want to walk up the escalators, who can't walk up the escalators, especially if I have no stair option and you are blocking me on the escalator. I will curse you and every generation going back 10.
But
I
it's
have
just
feelings about this.
it just blows my mind because I remember what was it? His name is O'Mahony, and he was there just the whole time. It was like, "Oh, I hate these non-Londoners," and it was the same way that his ancestors back in the Roman era would have spoken when they seen an uncivilized, unfashioned. Because this is what's funny about cities as well is they can always tell the outsider because he's not wearing the latest fashion, and it's like that's how the Romans were talking. Like Jesus, we haven't evolved at all.
Yeah, for me, it's just I don't care where you're from. Use the escalator properly, damn it.
You uncivilized barbarian.
Oh no, it's really funny. In Korea, the escalators actually have a lot of them have a yellow line going down the center so that
Mm,
you know this is the right side, this is for standing, and this is the left side, this is for going.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No.
Okay, let's bring the conversation back to our topic today.
Oh, yeah. It does kind of fit in there because this is
Yeah.
what blows my mind about this West African DNA as well. Because instead of finding, like, don't get me
Oh,
wrong.
actually, first off, let's reintroduce the topic because it's been a while. So everyone, we're talking today about the multi-ethnicity of medieval Europe, the evidence for it. Africa's in presence, Africans' presence in medieval Europe, and we started off with this amazing find that was reported in August of these two skeletons that were found in a 7th century English grave that have very clear West African DNA markers, and that they were not even the West Africans themselves, but they were the grandchildren of West Africans.
Mm.
So yeah, so that's where we were. Okay, so Philip,
Yeah,
continue.
and we were just saying how most likely, if you went to certain articles like evolution.net and stuff, they were pointing out that this was most likely a reconnection of trade from the Byzantine Empire. So these West
Right.
Africans, I was saying as well, most likely what was going on is that these West African men wanted, because these guys were investing a lot of money. They probably personally went from West Africa to North Africa into the Mediterranean, where the Byzantine Empire was trying to reconnect itself, and then up into England to make sure all that trade was happening. And from there,
Right.
they would have, gotten with local women. Did they settle down? Perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. How often do sailors leave a little something behind
I was thinking
after
that as well. Yeah.
they go away?
I was thinking that as well. And it's from my perspective as an Irish medieval historian, that's quite exciting. But I'll just jump back to the civilized, non-civilized thing. It's exciting though, because these weren't skeletons found in a city of London. These
Right.
are skeletons. One was found in Updown, which, don't get me wrong, it actually would have been a part of the trade area.
Right.
Just east of London in Updown. It's such a funny name as well, Updown.
Up, down.
Yeah.
English place names are some of the funniest ones, right? Like
Oh,
Berg on the little hill,
mm,
You're like, that's your town's name, Berg on the little hill? Really?
yeah.
Okay.
And so I'd say, yeah, that's interesting enough. And don't get me wrong, I think that's the one that had Byzantine. So it was kind of more Greek DNA, well, modern day Greek DNA, which is the Byzantine Empire, East Roman Empire, right? So
Right.
don't get me wrong, that DNA was very, very mixed to even start with. And that DNA also had Gaulish DNA as well, as you point out with the pottery stuff as well. So
Yep.
that one, that makes sense as a massive trader family, okay? And I think that was meant to be an elite burial anyway. I think you were
Hmm.
saying with the burial goods of the pottery. The second one was out in the middle of nowhere. From my opinion, maybe it was somewhere really important. It was a monastic area as well, which I'm going to butcher now because it's an Anglo-Saxon name, which is Warnt Malt Tavers. Okay, Wort Malt Tavers. All right, that's what it is. It's Wort Malt Tavers, and that's what it's going to be. But that was a monastic settlement, and that one's even more exciting again because that was a local girl. So the other one, they have a pretty good idea that was a high status, most likely a trader. If you look at the DNA, it's Gaulish, it's Byzantine Empire, most likely a trader family. The other one seems to be very much a local girl. So this local
Right.
girl had father from her father's side, West African DNA. So that one is very, very exciting that this person lived out in the middle of nowhere and would have been a mixed, of mixed skin. So that one, and the fact that this person was buried inside of the monastic area shows that this person, this person wasn't born West African and went, oh Jesus, this is a creature, throw it in the bin. And I know
Right.
that sounds very, very bad, but at the same time, the fact she was buried in the monastic settlement shows that that local area wasn't racist. They weren't turning around and says, sure, we're all a bunch of racists now, we'll throw out the West Africans. That doesn't seem to be the case at all. It seems that this person was taken into the local society of
Right.
this local Anglo-Saxon village and was looked after. As Rachel has pointed out there, this could have been a trader, had a little bit of fun with a local girl and
Yep.
then just went off home. And the fact that the society didn't turn around and say, oh, we'll just throw this person out, just took on this person into their society is very exciting in itself, because the fact that we have a lot of integration and mixing going on, especially with the second one being that this is, and I'm looking at the map of this one really is out in the middle of nowhere. The first one, you could turn around and says, well, that's a part of the trade route going from London to the Byzantine Empire to the Gaulish region.
Right. It's connected. Yeah.
Yeah, it's connected. The other one is just like, wow, that really is out in the middle of nowhere. So it's exciting to see, okay, so what's the possibility here? Kevin just asking, the West African DNA could have traveled through some sort of marriage trade agreement. Yeah, I fully agree, especially with the first one. The second one, very, very interesting. Any story could pop up there. But I do agree with Kevin for the first one, for up down.
Well, and the DNA, the level, the prevalence of these DNA markers and the levels at which they occur in the DNA show that they're not really far back, right? We're talking parents or grandparents, no
Yeah.
further back than that. So it's not like it's been there since, Rome was a republic
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah, which makes it even more exciting because, okay,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, at the same time, although this is quote unquote dark age Anglo-Saxon England, right?
Right. Fresh
In
after the
Ireland,
Justinian plague. So yeah.
In Ireland, on the other hand, we're still in the era of, as we were just saying there, Diarmaid Mac Curbal, the last pagan king who had quickly found Christianity and was just like, please don't sacrifice me.
I'm a believer. Yay, Jesus.
It's just amazing how we're just thinking about sacrificing him, but now he's a Christian. That's kind of funny, like. And it's just coincidence that religion happened to be anti-sacrifice. That's quite funny,
Right.
isn't it?
That's
Yeah.
really great. And the way that God touches people is just so amazing.
Just from Christianity. Would you believe that? But regardless, and this is the era of Diarmaid Mac Curbal, and so it's exciting if we were to do the same thing in Ireland, which has much more better connections with the Byzantine Empire, and we know that because of all the Byzantine crosses. There's loads of effigies are in Ireland, just dumped. By the way, they're just dumped out in the middle of nowhere. You'd be driving your car, and just see one of these stones on it would be an effigy that's dated all the way to the 7th century, just dumped in the middle of rural Ireland. It just blows my mind every time I see them. But they'll have carvings of Byzantine crosses, and they're dated to the 7th century, and they're found all over Ireland. Like, you'll be in a middle of a field, and a cow will be rubbing against it, destroying this ancient effigy. And they're just dumped everywhere in Ireland.
Right.
But we know from all these effigies that Ireland is very much connected, not just because of the literature, because of the Annals of Ulster, which highlights our trade with the Byzantine Empire, but also because of all these effigies of these Byzantine crosses that are found everywhere.
Right, but I mean, also the Book of Kells is full of people wearing very clearly, heavily Byzantine influenced garments, right?
Yeah,
so
big time. Yeah.
It's they're definitely not wearing the tribal fashions, right? They're yeah. So the connections are very clear. I mean, it's obvious, and there's actually a good question. Was it the countryside? Maybe they were taken there to be hidden or put into a convent. No. The cemetery is in a village. It's a cemetery. It's not just, they didn't just find a single body kind of hidden out in the middle of nowhere. This person was buried with lots of other people. So it's not a question of them being isolated and hidden. It's just the village that was part of this, that was connected to this cemetery, is just not on the trade routes, is our point. Right.
Yeah, because what they were expecting, to be honest with you, when they were saying this, I wouldn't expect this. I expect this, as I was saying there to Rachel earlier, I wasn't expecting this in the south of England. I was expecting this in the north of England, which is, they actually found Irish bones in there as well. So they tested the bones and it had Irish DNA in it, which would have been most likely the monastic, both the traders and the monastic priests that came over to England. Because Ireland is in the golden age of saints and scholars, what you have is a lot of monastic priests or clergy going from Ireland over to England and then re-educating people about, God and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Which in itself is very exciting for me, because the historians in that area and the archaeologists, they were actually expecting to find those bones. To me, I was very surprised to see that much clergy active in that area. It wouldn't surprise me if it was the north of England, because at the time, Northumberland and Lindisfarne was very much connected to the Enale dynasty. The Enale dynasty, they were mainly located in the north of Ireland. And so it wouldn't surprise me if there were a lot of Irish clergy in the north of England.
Yeah,
But it does
absolutely.
surprise
But
me that
yeah,
there's
that makes sense. But the Irish DNA in the South is just further evidence of what you and I have been saying for a year now. I don't know.
mm,
Uh, that the medieval world, even in the so-called Dark Ages, is
mm,
interconnected. There was some good questions here. One I can answer: were the Julian pipes not originally brought in from some form of trade? So the bagpipes, Ireland is the last part of Europe to get the bagpipes. I know that breaks everyone's heart. Scotland and Ireland, I will repeat it. Scotland and Ireland are literally the last places in Europe to get the bagpipes.
breaking my
The
heart
I know bagpipes come from the Middle East originally, a long
here.
time ago, and they
Mm.
slowly spread throughout Europe. Italy gets them first, Spain gets them first, then France and Germany, then England, and then Ireland and Scotland. Literally, everyone else has had the bagpipes and basically kind of moved on from them by the time the Irish and the Scottish start playing them.
That's lousy.
So, yeah.
That's
So
lousy.
a lot of medieval dance music is from Italy is played on the bagpipes.
Mm.
I know that kind of shocks everyone to hear that, but they're actually the word for bagpipes in Italian is in 15th century Tuscan is piva. It's also a dance. So
Mm.
yeah, absolutely. The bagpipes no doubt reached Ireland and Scotland through trade routes. That's probably how it went. Or some Scots or some Scotsmen or Irishmen went on crusade and encountered the bagpipes and brought them back, right?
Yeah,
But
which also could have
everyone
happened
else
as well.
everyone else had them first.
So lousy. That's probably a whole lot of things were brought back, especially after the
Yeah.
13th century and stuff, when you had groups from Limerick and stuff going off to the likes of Jerusalem and oh, what's that one that starts with A, the north of
Ocker. You're thinking of
Akar, that's one.
Ocker. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was reading that the other day. You had a large group from Dundalk in the Third
Yep.
Crusade that attached themselves onto Richard III. There's a large group from the north of Dublin being Dundalk. So that whole region there, just a bunch of people just picked up one day. Right, you're a bunch of knights. There you go, shifting off. Like today, I was reading this and I was like, to these lads, this world outside of Ireland must be like, Jesus, this is brilliant. See this
For
before,
God and glory. And wow, look at the women.
yeah. But that's the interesting thing because somebody thinks that because I have a bit of Palestinian DNA, and most of my DNA
Oh,
is
your
located. Yeah,
crusader
that's
ancestors.
yeah. That's what some people are saying because it's the Knights Hospitaller were very active in Limerick. So there was a good chance. And when they were going through my mom's DNA, by the way, it's very, although people were like, my mom's from England and all this stuff, her DNA is very Sligo. It's very local Sligo DNA. Randomly, there's some random Slav DNA in there. And we're just like, how the hell did that get in there? Do you know? My dad, on the other hand, very, very mixed because it's Limerick City. And that's one of the major ports in Ireland. So his DNA is like 60% Gaelic or something like that. And then the rest, I say Gaelic, I'm trying to simplify it here. And the 40% is just a mix of everything. It is so diverse. It's crazy. Pretty
Right.
much everybody that came into Limerick, my dad had mixed, my dad's DNA had mixed with. And then shockingly, there's a good bit of Palestinian DNA in there as well. And people were like, how the hell? That's another one that people were like, how the hell? But then some people were like, because of my circles and everything, maybe it's because of my circles, people were like, well, the Knights Hospitallers were very, very active in Limerick. So it could have been, through the Crusades and stuff. The millions of ways that could have happened, like.
Yeah, well, I'll repeat this. I'll reiterate this again for emphasis and understanding. A lot of the DNA tests that are these genealogy DNA tests that are going out, you really have to do your due diligence because the way in which they identify origins it's not as clear cut. Again, there is no DNA marker that literally has a light on it that says, I am Palestinian.
Yeah.
What the deal is that there's certain kinds of genetic traits and genetic markers that are just more prevalent in certain regions that indicate that there's a likelihood that one of your ancestors came from there, but it doesn't mean they did.
Yeah.
Like there could be some kind of weird genetic variant for that same marker that just happens to crop up in people from Limerick. And because people from Limerick aren't as exciting politically as people from Palestine, for instance, that the DNA, the company that did the genealogy decided, well, this just clearly must be Palestinian. There's no way that this can be natural in Limerick. So I say that about all these companies that do these DNA tests. Yes, it could be that you do. Me, for instance, I have like a tiny bit of West African heritage. Yes, that could come from my Southern Italian and my Southern Italian grandfather, sitting there on the tip of the boot of Italy, very close to Africa, right? There's reason that's not too far fetched. Or it could be that genetic marker that everyone claims is West African is also from other parts of Europe. So you have to, that's why I like to emphasize we shouldn't overinterpret any of these results, which is why it's important that we have iconographic and documentary evidence to back some of this stuff up. And in later parts of the medieval period, we do have documentary evidence that talks about Africans, about Mohammedans, Saracens being in England, for instance, or in Italy or in France. So yeah, that's why I always talk about, the Trinity, the Holy Trinity of historical research is you want iconography, you want documentary evidence, you want archaeological evidence. And I guess in this case, the archaeology is the DNA, right? That's the archaeology. So yeah, I don't want anyone to overinterpret anything we're saying here. Remember, the past is a mystery wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in political garbage. So we have to unpack it very carefully, is my point.
Yeah, the comment section as well, opening up a different interpretations as well. Very, very true as well. Like even one example could be even from modern recently. Yeah, it could be as well because I don't specialize in DNA. Couldn't tell you, to be honest with you. Like as you guys point out there, because Kevin is very good as well. Sometimes like Kevin's in the comment section there, and when it comes down to having these conversations about DNA and stuff, Kevin always gets into the the deeper of the or 2-3 or whatever the name of the DNA set group is and stuff between the likes of the O'Reillys and the McMorras and all those families and stuff. Completely different conversation. Like I mostly tried, because I'm a historian, I'm an what was it called, qualified historian, not a qualified genealogist or anything.
Geneticist. You're not a geneticist.
See, there you go.
We are not. Neither of us are geneticists. I have a complete novice understanding of DNA, more than the average person, but certainly I can't start quoting actual trait in designations to you, for instance, or gene designations at all. But speaking of the evidence for slightly later, for instance, in 12th century England, there's a really great court case where a Saracen gets arrested for participating in a duel. I went back when we did this, God knows how many 20,000s of years ago we did that live stream on this. I mentioned that. So there's this Saracen, and unfortunately the notebook with all of my detailed notes on this is my cats have made away with it. So I don't remember his name. I don't remember his exact name, but he's referred to as a Saracen, a Garamantes. He's called a Garamant, which is the 12th century English term for person of dark complexion. And he's also referred to as he's called Muhammad, but that's like all he's called. And he's arrested. Both parties who participate in this duel are arrested, and he pays a fine. And the records of him paying the fine are actually preserved from the 12th century in England. And he can't afford the whole fine because it's apparently 12th century England had a pretty hefty fine for dueling. And so he can't pay it all at once. So he actually sets up an installment plan, which is interesting. And there's a record of him paying the first installment. There's a record of him paying the second installment, but there's no record of him coming and paying the third installment. So either he died because maybe he got in another duel or he left England. We don't know, but he's in England for several years at least. In the legal records as this Garamant, this Saracen, this Mohammedan, right? So 12th century England, he's living there and breaking the law in the usual way that men apparently in the 12th century like to break the
Yeah,
law.
that's how you do it. Go on.
Right. Right. And so that's what I talk about. I like to back up, the archaeology with this documentary evidence because
Mm,
it's very fascinating that the more you start to dig through these records, that England has a lot of really well preserved records,
mm,
honestly, despite all the fires and the Blitz and all the wars, they somehow managed to hold on to a lot of these, in some cases, 1,000 or more year old records.
mm.
And yeah, so I like to really go through the documentary evidence. And I suspect that as more of these law rolls are digitized, as they're transcribed, as they're translated and published, my suspicion is we're going to find an increasing amount of evidence for the presence of a much more cultural sort in places like England than we really would expect to find
Mm.
necessarily.
Oh, massively, massively. And yeah, obviously give Kevin a bullet bush in the comment section there.
Oh yeah, look at
Um,
that. Look at Kevin. My God, man, look at you.
I've helped so many adopted people find their parents and grandparents. It's amazing feeling to see how happy they get. Yeah, yeah. Like the documentation for us is definitely more of our field of expertise from my side. But
Right.
Kevin, you're so good. Like you can see Kevin's earlier comment where he literally like my brain always gets mixed up. Maybe I should actually sit down and learn that stuff of the RZ255 of the Leinster DNA structure and stuff, and even the connection over to the north of Ireland and stuff. Like Kevin is so good at both looking into the DNA, and I'm assuming as well you're so good at working with the with the documentation and stuff as well to be able to find the connection, especially with adopted people and stuff. I
Right.
know, right, that we had a huge problem around, I think, from the 1920s up to the 1970s, where a lot of children, because of fighting and poverty and stuff in Ireland, a lot of children were adopted out over to America, and
Yeah,
they
and
weren't
and
able
and
to.
some of them literally stolen from their mothers.
Yeah,
Literally
yeah,
stolen from their mothers. Their mothers
mm,
were lied to and told the babies were dead.
yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty. I just watched a movie about a true story about this, and it literally, I just cried so hard at the end. The story had no happy ending.
Oh yeah, it was the same thing with what's his name? Oh, the actor who lives up the road from me, Killian Murphy. What was it called? Killian Murphy's new movie as well is on the same subject as well, where he's covering the what was it called? The laundries with the women in it and stuff. And also very even the ending is. Have you seen Killian Murphy's new movie? The one with the laundries and stuff.
I have not. I have not.
It's I'll quickly look up the name of it there. It is depressing as well. And the whole movie is so dark.
Well, and
Uh,
so Ireland and Korea actually share some in
mm,
about the same time frame, very similar situations. In Korea,
really?
babies were taken from their mothers, yeah, because they were unwed mothers. Just like in
Mm,
Ireland, we're talking mostly about the unwed mothers, right?
yeah.
They were taken from their mothers and either reported as being dead or kidnapped, but officially adopted out to American parents.
Mm,
Yeah. So, I have one friend who is he's Korean, he was an adoptee, and he always says, "Well, I don't want to meet my mother because she discarded me, so she's not my real mother." And I'm like, "Richard, she might not have you might have been stolen from her.
yeah,
You don't
that's just
know.
yeah.
You don't know until you go and find her. She might
Mm,
be hoping someday you will come to her because she has no way of tracing you because they purposely did not keep good records of this. In Ireland too, by the way. They did the
mhm.
same thing
Yeah.
where
Oh,
they just trashed the records so that there would be no chance of these children being reunited with their mothers, right? Because especially in the case, unfortunately, this one case that I read about, the mother superior in charge of
yeah.
the convent viewed those mothers as being undeserving of knowing their children because they had not, they had violated the rules by having sex before
Oh
marriage,
yeah.
right?
It's
So
absolutely like I remember I was living I actually grew up in the aftermath of all that stuff, and my mother remembered it so clearly because she was only
right.
what 18, 19 at the time when I was only a small child, and she would talk about the Magdalene sisters and stuff and what happened to them. and the way that they were treated. And it was the same thing with my own grandmother as well, because all those emotions were very, very raw.
Yeah.
Because of the way that my grandmother had grown up in a a school ran by the nuns when the nuns could still beat them. And
Right.
so, you'd have stories about how my grandmother would try to learn this stupid poem, for God's sake of all things. And the nun, you know, obviously because of her own problems, because, whatever.
Right.
Obviously, I can't go into details because it's YouTube.
No,
But
no,
then
no. I mean,
deciding,
there's unfortunately violence is inherited, right? And it's
mm,
taught and it's
yeah,
learned.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Nun decided to start dancing on her feet, like, and that poor girl, my poor grandmother, walking home and then being beaten again by her, father and stuff, because, how
Right.
dare she get something wrong at school. And I just, even today, like, if that was to happen to my child, first off, I'd be like, a fucking poem. Get out. Does that get you any work in business? No, a poem. You're wasting my child's time. But I'm more educated, you say. I don't want to say, oh, I'm the greatest person in the world. But these days, I think parents are great because they're more critical. They'll look at a
Right.
textbook and going, does this pay the bills? Like, honestly, does this pay the bills? The amount of parents that react like that these days, and I think it's a brilliant thing. I think it's a brilliant attitude to have. Because of the fact our government is trying to make us as stupid as possible. And you can see that by the way they're trying to educate our
Yeah.
children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what's
Big
the point
time.
of,
In the
yeah.
US as well. It's
Mm,
literally most of the public schools were purposefully broken to create an uneducated electorate
yeah.
because uneducated people are real easy to manipulate.
Oh, 100%.
Really easy.
Yeah. So it's great to have and you know what? It's for the good of America to be more educated, and the
Oh
great thing of the
God,
West.
yes.
Because now, wake up, everybody. You're now competing against China and Singapore, who now are on top of us and smashing us
Yep.
business. The Americans are freaking out because guess what? The Chinese were able to very, very quickly go in there and start buying up all the American lands. And they understand
Yep.
how American, land tax works even better than American businessmen. So they very quickly came in there, started buying up a whole load of land, understood how land tax work. And yet the majority of Americans can't compete against that because most
Mm-mm.
Americans aren't educated in a competitive level
They
to
are
be able to
not.
buy the land against them. So
And on
even,
purpose.
yeah,
So it's great. Thank you, GOP. You broke it all.
so
Wonderful.
yeah, so now it's really, really this lack of education has really bitten people on the ass. And so it's a good thing if you turn around to your child and say, look at their textbook and say, can you use this in business? No, you can't. Get out. I don't need this. Compared to in Singapore, where parents are literally on the doorstep of the school every single day saying, I need my child to be able to be at a business competitive rate. And everything in Singapore is designed not just to be competitive. And I know it's a horrible system. Being competitive is horrible. There's no two ways about that.
Oh,
But
it
at the
is.
same
It's
time,
destructive to your
yeah,
soul. I mean, literally. It's the
yeah,
depression. The depression. Korea has a similar system. It's worse,
yeah,
actually. It's terrible. Children
mm,
children are in school 12 to 16 hours a day here.
mm.
And the suicide rates, the anxiety, the depression, but they don't learn anything. This
Yeah,
is the
that's the problem
thing.
with Japan.
They
Japan has the
they
same
don't learn
problem.
a thing.
Yeah,
They study for a test, and then after the test, they couldn't tell you a
yeah,
single thing that they were tested on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Compared to Singapore and certain schools in China, the children are purposely designed to be very, very competitive, business-wise, especially trade business-wise. And the Chinese are exceptionally good at understanding land tax
Mm.
as well, which is something that is completely smashing us right now because of the fact that, especially between the trade between I think it's Beijing because they're trying to reconnect the modern version of the Silk Road, and
Yeah, yeah,
Jesus, they're
they
buying
are
so
the
fast.
Belt and the Road project that
That's
no
it.
one is tracking.
And the
No one is
Chinese are
tracking this
so good
thing.
at it. Yeah. And
It's
we,
you know
yeah, go
it's
on.
most people don't realize that China owns most of Africa now.
Mm,
That China has all of these agreements with all these Central Asian countries so that they can build this highway that's going to connect China to Europe.
yeah.
Like that, there should be a lot more concern about this than there is.
Oh, big time. Like, come on. They're literally on top of us. We need to literally rebuild the entire bloody trade and stuff. we're bitching about this, which is slightly close to our original topic of trade in the early medieval period, especially when you would have had traders in the early medieval period, which would have also been very competitive. But at least they knew to educate their children, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely. No, any merchant worth their salt,
Mm.
literally worth their salt, should be able to read, write, and keep the books.
Yes.
Because if you can't keep the books, if you can't keep your records, then you're going to be cheated left, right, and center. Right.
Mm.
That's this myth of the illiterate Middle Ages is another of these terrible myths. Now, were the literacy rates the same as they are now? No.
Mm.
But this bizarre statement of, well, no one could read and write in the Middle Ages except the monks is not true.
Yeah.
It's not true. It's not true. It's not true. Also, Europe is not a monolith. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very mixed inside there. Jim, what was it called? Some of the Africans. I'll skip that one because that's an interpretation. Because the thing is with some of our media and stuff is that we're getting different interpretations. Like the interpretation that Rachel is getting from her media is different to the interpretation I'm getting from Irish media, and I know the Irish media is purposely giving me the wrong interpretation on purpose because I not only pay attention to Irish media, but then I'll turn on the Japanese media and it's saying something completely different. So I know the media is manipulating and controlling me. So anything to do with interpretations in the comment section, I'll be like, very critical of it. I don't want to be rude or anything. I just also don't want to be annoying the algorithm at the same time because I know the algorithm can be like, especially like, where am I right now?
Oh no! If you say something completely inflammatory, the almighty algorithm will reward us tenfold, right? It's terrible. I hate this ecosystem.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about history. But if I don't occasionally drop certain words in this live stream, then our views go way down. It's disgusting. Anyway, so back to the documentary evidence, or the evidence for multi-ethnicity in medieval Europe. So I talked about these records that we have in England, and they go all the way up. We've got all these pipe rolls across the centuries that talk about traders coming in and setting up, having shops like trading posts in London. There's 14th century tax returns from England from 1380s that refer to Peter the African by name. They call him Peter the African, and he's paying taxes, right? So if he's paying taxes, he's there long enough to pay taxes. It's a tax return, right? And then in the 14th century, we have births being registered in England that refer to their African, the children as being born to African parents. So, we've got that kind of documentary evidence in England. What do you have going on in Ireland? Is there any kind of? I know Ireland has the problem that all your archives keep burning up.
Yeah, setting on fire. I was going to say that as well. Plus, it doesn't help that although there's definitely massive indication of people from, especially North Africa, coming over from North Africa to Iberia and then into the Dublin courts and stuff. Like we literally have bards and stuff in the Dublin courts during the Viking Age. The problem is then once we get up to that period you were saying there, is that because of the constant war with England and stuff, there's kind of a dip on people who are coming in and out of the island of Ireland. It becomes somewhat isolated, especially after the Scottish-Norwegian War, where Norway, because England has control over Dublin, Norway is no longer inclined to invest into Dublin. So they start looking more to the east for trade, especially after the Mongolian invasion, which is also another massive, what's the best way to refer to?
Inflection point, turning point.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the Mongol Empire being multi-ethnic itself, which it was.
Yeah,
it was very multi-ethnic.
Yeah, because now you have a trade link that's going from Beijing over to I know Hungary is the Polish-Hungarian area is slightly funny because of the fact it's still a kind of warring area against nomads and stuff. So even trade is slightly funny, but there is somewhat of trade going in from that region up there and then up into Norway. So Norway is kind of looking more to the east for trade now rather than looking to Dublin. But all that kind of movement definitely would have been there during the early medieval period. That's why when I see this stuff dated to the 6th and the 7th century, where England is allegedly a dark age for the Anglo-Saxons, I'm quite
Right.
excited to see what they could find in the likes of Clonmacnoise and areas like that in the centre of Ireland, both the capital of Ireland at the time, to see if there is any African traders coming in there, especially from West Africa, trading with locals, settling for perhaps a bit, maybe even paying a tax. Would be a funny one because it's cattle raiding society. So
Right.
they probably just
No one is paying tax returns on their cattle raids, are
yeah,
they?
yeah. You
I
see
owe
that.
you one. I owe you one cow as my share of this raid for the
Yeah,
taxes.
exactly. Like, so maybe not so much in the golden age of Ireland, I'm not sure, but in the Viking age, it was definitely because you have the bringing in of first silver ingots that are weighed, and then eventually coinage that then is replaced by coinage. Funnily enough, I think it's first started in Sweden. Sweden starts bringing it in within the ports of Scandinavia because of the fact that they wanted to simplify trade in those areas, and that's how Sweden started to bring in, from my understanding, and if anyone in the comment section wants to correct me on that one, that's why Sweden started to bring in cities, was the fact that these ports were starting to get bigger and bigger, and they needed to make changes for all this trade. So not only were they switching from small scale ports into city ports, but they were also switching over the coinage. And I think that's the same in Dublin as well, that it was switching from a kind of a settlement that was, because the settlement, the basic settlement of Dublin is strange because it's not a Norse settlement to start with. It looks like a
Right.
monastic settlement. It's got a church, and it's meant to be Viking, by the way. It's meant to be pagan Viking. And it's got a monastic church in the middle, which is Christ Church. And then it's got Viking
Yeah.
defenses and Viking homes in it. So it's strange. But regardless, it seems to switch from this monastic style to more of a Viking port city. And with it, they switch from, first, probably maybe at first had cattle to trade with, then quickly switched over to silver ingots, and then from silver ingots over to coinage, especially, before the 11th century and stuff, with the likes of, what's his name? Citric Silver. Yeah, Citric Silkenbeard. That's the one.
And isn't the coinage, right? I remember seeing some Arab coins that they've excavated in Ireland, right? Like these are
Yeah,
coins that are they were either from the Caliphate
yeah,
on the Iberian
they are.
Peninsula, or they were from the Caliphate on the North African side,
You
right?
literally read my mind, because I've got the foundation now to my conversation done. I can actually now start going into the advanced stuff, and you're bang on right. The reason why all these changes were happening is because at the time, as you point out there, the Caliphate is in the golden age. So you do have a lot of traders, not only traders, but you have, various bards, people who most likely wants to play musical instruments. All of these people, and it's not even before, like even before Dublin goes into an economic golden age, when Turgis is in charge, and Turgis is a horrible human being. He's an idiot, by the way. But even when Turgis is in charge of Dublin, and Dublin is very small scale, there's still people coming in from North Africa and Iberia to play. They have what was it called? Caliphate names. That's how we know that they're fancy people.
Right, they're fancy people.
Yeah, that's how my brain reads it. When I look at the Annals of Ulster and it's got all these fancy names, I'm just like, oh, isn't he from the fancy world? The
He's from
basically
the fancy.
the Islamic, what was it called? The Islamic Golden Age, isn't it? Or the
Yeah,
Islamic
yeah.
Golden
It's
Age?
and Spain. It is. It's a golden era. It is definitely a golden age in Spain, and so it's really funny that like the golden age for Spain and what is now Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula, its
Yeah.
golden age is kind of close to Ireland's golden age, right? There's
That's
significant
where we're finding
overlap,
these coins. Yeah, that's why we're finding all these coins in Ireland, because
right?
as Claire Downham is still arguing, she's got her book out. I have it over there. It's the Viking Age Ireland or something like that. But she is still writing up, and she probably has endless amount to work with. That's probably why she's taking long enough. She's arguing right now that Dublin was in an economic golden age, which would be very, very easy to argue, because anytime we do archaeological digs in Dublin, if the council isn't trying to destroy it, we're finding like massive indication that this truly was a great golden age in Ireland during the
Right.
Viking Age, And the clear signs, as you pointed out there, with the coins, When we look at the likes of the Annals of Ulster, it gives off all these, as I was saying, the fancy names and stuff that
Fancy
shows
names.
names from what was it called? The Iberian Peninsula, modern day Spain and Portugal, and also from
Right,
North Africa and stuff. So we know that there's a whole load of mixing, not just with people from the Iberian Peninsula, which is only down the road from Ireland, especially trade wise, but we're also getting people from Brittany, Wales, and
right,
Scotland. That's the Celtic world, as they refer to. And also, we're getting people from Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, and even as far as Finland, people
right.
traveling from Finland, which is also exciting in itself, So you are, although Clonmacnoise is meant to be the capital of Ireland, Dublin, on the other hand, at this point would have been very, very mixed.
Right. Okay, so I've had a couple of requests now to show what it is I'm working on. So just for a moment, I'm going to go full screen so that you can see what I'm doing. Otherwise, you won't know. I'm working on a new gown. So what I'm wearing now is actually just my underwear. I'll be honest with you all. I won't. There's no prevarication here. This is underwear. This is 15th century underwear in England, France, and Flanders, and there's a gown that should go over top of it. And so I'm making a new gown that will go over top of it. And this is one of the panels,
Mm.
right? This is a really nice. This is silk. See how shiny this is? This is not silk. It's wool. Right. So this is the back panel. And what I've been doing this whole time while talking is attaching a little train on the bottom, a little extra fabric on the bottom so that there's a nice little train in the back. So it's black, so you probably can't really, oh, I guess you can. Yeah, you can see the seam. I was basically whip stitching two pieces of silky black wool together so that I can actually cut them into a nice train. So that's what I was working on. But my next thing that I'm about to start working on, because I always have some damn thing that I need to do, the sleeve of my 15th century Italian, and we'll talk about 15th century Italy in a moment. The sleeve came off of the gown, so I need to reattach it to the bodice. So that's the next thing I'll be working on. Okay, thank you all for this momentary segue into what the hell is the Contessa doing. Now back to your regularly scheduled medieval buzz.
Aye, definitely. And Jim was asking about the story in modern day immigration into Ireland. Yeah, that's a very touchy subject. Just to be clear, like Ireland has taken on mixing of immigration since what was it, 2006. We had a lot of people moving over from Poland over to Ireland. And that was quite good, very good immigration inside of there. And then around 2008, we started to get immigration in from Nigeria, also very good immigration into Ireland. But for some reason, 2015 popped in and we had the homeless crisis. Obviously, I myself has been affected by it. Rachel, you were saying to a certain degree, even in America, people have been affected.
It's huge. It's terrible. Yeah. But I mean, I don't moralize poverty. I know that most people who end up homeless didn't want to go there, and they suffer usually from extreme mental illness. And it's really easy in the US to go from having a home to not having a home. And once you don't have a home, it's really hard to even get a job. So it's an issue.
About that this morning. Yeah, I was thinking because you're bang on right. The moment you're homeless anywhere in the world right now, there is zero schemes to get people. There was a homeless man I was watching on YouTube. He's got his YouTube set up and everything, and I was listening to him yesterday, and he spent a full 10 minutes ragingly angry at the fact that people were coming up to him while he was begging and telling him get a job. And it's like, how am I supposed to get a job? I go into a toilet to clean myself so I'm not scratching myself. I have no access to a home. I want a job. I will scrub the street in front of me for money. And he has a phone because he's on a form of social welfare, as he's open about that. And he's looking like he begs for coffee and stuff. Like it's not like he's begging because he's an alcoholic. He explains in his YouTube videos is that after, what was it? It was only recently, I think it's 2015 or something. He's sadly in his 50s and stuff. And he lost his business. His business collapsed and his kids and wife left him and everything. And so he's left to beg. But with the social welfare money he was getting, he managed to get himself a phone. So he's rigged up. And he's accepting donations online and stuff. I can't remember specifically what it was, but I was listening to him last night, and he spent 10 minutes arguing at the fact that he cannot get accommodation, and without accommodation, he cannot get the correct connections. But I don't know how it works in his state and stuff. This is in America, by the way. He
Oh
can't
yeah.
get connections into a bank, and because he can't get connections into a bank, he cannot get a home, and from there he can't get a job. And
Yep.
he spent 10 minutes just raging about this, like that this is that the whole system is broken as of 2015 onwards, like, you know.
Yeah, it
So
really is, and it's just getting more broken. So,
yeah,
yeah, the homeless crisis is an issue, and not only is it a question of, well, you lost your job because you can be fired the
mm,
same day and not get paid the next day.
yeah,
The prices for housing, like in Ireland, right? The prices for housing in the U.S. are insane.
mm,
Oh my God! If we lived in the U.S. right now, we couldn't afford it. We
yeah.
couldn't. Not on our income. We
Mm.
no.
Yeah. Oh, it's so bad. Like that's a lot of people
Yeah,
ask me as well, like why I'm over in Asia, why I'm not over in Ireland and stuff.
yeah.
Especially with me and my wife's qualifications and stuff. No, we got knocked out of the game. Like especially after we were just as 2015 was coming in. Although we were actually getting paid very well. The two of us were working because we were passionate and in love with our work. We were working overtime, and there is still so much work to do in Ireland. So we were working, no problem. Somebody says, "Oh, we have to stay overtime." Yeah, no problems. I was working in tourism. My wife was working in archaeology. I'd see my wife once in 2 months, you know, and I had no problems with that because the two of us were doing what we loved.
Right. Yeah.
Because at the time I was doing a job in Youghal for most of the summer, and Yuki was up in the north of Dublin. So I'd never really seen Yuki all that much. And then suddenly the coronavirus kicked in, and the two of us were left up in Dundalk, and we were very much struck because the homeless crisis was at its peak as well. We were staying with friends, and so we were jump around to
Right.
friends' houses and stuff because we were only 25 at the time. I was not sorry. Yeah, we were around 25, 29 or stuff. So like hopping to people's homes and stuff, no problems there. So when we were working, and you chuck in rent money and drink money, no problems. Like that's how the two of us were living, and
Jesus.
it was the life. It was the life, Rachel.
It was the life. It
Yeah.
definitely. It sounds like you were really living large, my friend.
Oh my God, it's brilliant. And
and
then I
and
did the
then
living history as well.
and then people say, "Why is it you like living in Korea?" Oh, well, how long do you have? I've got different length presentations depending on the amount of time you have.
Yeah. But then what happened was the coronavirus came in, and that just killed the lifestyle that me and Yuki were living. We were up in Dundalk paying rent, no work. We were just on our savings and stuff. Yuki managed to get work down in an American company. There was an American company nearby, and Yuki was working up there, and I was on my savings. And oh my God, it was painful. So the two of us had to immigrate over to Asia, over to Japan and stuff. And Jesus, it's like putting the whole world on easy mode. It is
Yeah,
so easy out here.
it's so
Like
easy.
yeah, like
It
there's
is. It's
some
yeah, it's the same thing in Korea. Like
yeah,
everything's affordable, rent
mm,
is affordable, food is affordable, restaurants are affordable, public transit is affordable. We don't have a car, we don't need a car, we don't want a car.
yeah.
So yeah, the different world.
Oh, it's crazy. Like anytime somebody says like definitely try to have a go to see if you can get over to Asia. Yeah, 100%. Everybody I've talked to from
Yeah.
Australia. I know Australia is kind of getting a bit weird as well right now. Um, but definitely if you go over to the Philippines, as long as you can get work, like definitely try to dip your toes in. Especially if you're in your 20s. If you're in your 20s, if you, literally, and you've got two parents, don't even think if you okay. So if you're in a difficult position, definitely different situation. But if you've got two parents in a comfortable situation, definitely dip your toes in. Get into what was it called, teaching English, and just get
Yeah,
over here as quick as you
absolutely.
can. Yeah, I can't
Yep.
say that enough. Like it's like literally just putting your whole life on easy mode. You're probably struggling now, going, "Oh, what am I going to go tomorrow?" There's so many Irish people. They did a statistic on this. So many endless amount of Irish people are just like thinking about just the now. They don't know how to get to tomorrow. I'm telling you, just immigrate over here. See if you can get work over here. It's like
Yeah.
literally just tipping your life on easy mode. It's crazy. Like,
Yeah. Same thing in Korea. You can come here and teach English. If you're a native English speaker with any university degree, any you can get a job teaching English, and part of your salary package will be housing. You will get your own little studio apartment, fully furnished, well, mostly furnished, and Yes, it'll be hard work because Koreans work a lot. They
Yeah.
work more. But if you're American, you're used to working a lot probably anyway. So,
Well, that's it as well.
but
Like,
it is,
and
it is, it's life on easy mode. It really is.
oh, it's crazy. I don't know what the hell is going on. And Jim O'Neill, yeah, that stereotype in the homeless is so bad. But even on top of that, even with people that have make mistakes and do make mistakes while they're homeless, it's such a tough life. I wouldn't even I wouldn't turn around and say, oh, that person's subhuman or
Yeah.
anything. That person has life hard enough the way it is. So yeah, it's a difficult one, all right, especially for the homeless, and the homeless crisis in both Europe and in America right now is quite bad. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, let's get back to happy feelings
Yeah.
with early medieval.
Multi-ethnicity in Europe.
Mm. And it's crazy
um,
because this is the period, as we were saying, the golden age of Ireland, where you have people healthily, not in this kind of unhealthy environment of a homeless crisis, immigrating to Ireland. In fact, in the early medieval Ireland, weirdly enough, actually, Ireland was having a population dip and it started to re-emerge. The population started to go back up again with the arrival of the Vikings. Couples, for some strange reason, started to mingle again. Irish couples started to mingle again and started having more children. It's still debated why there seems to be a population dip going into the Viking Age. There's some weird population dip that happens in Ireland, and then suddenly,
it's not just Ireland, right?
mm,
So across, and this could just be a knock-on effect from the Justinian plague, but
okay,
um, this happens all across Europe, and actually it's good for women
mm,
because that's why in the first millennium, women across all of Western Europe are much more enfranchised. They're treated much more like equals. They have more rights. They have more value because
mm,
when the population is low, suddenly everyone goes, oh crap, we need women.
yeah,
um, and so that's why in the first millennium, in most places in Europe, you have bride prices instead of dowries. And this is the era in which the monasteries are really gaining steam. And a
mm,
lot of women are going, yeah, I'm not interested in being part of this whole family giving birth to children thing. I'm going to go be an independent woman in the monastery.
yeah,
And it's a time when the monasteries are openly accepting women. Women don't have to bring a dowry to join a monastery in most places in first millennium Europe. But after the first millennium, there's a big population growth and there's a big shift. And suddenly we start talking about dowries for women instead of bride prices.
mm,
The laws start getting very misogynistic. Um, and, any place where you have fines that determine the value of the person who's been injured,
mm,
you can tell where women and men stand relative to each other based on who gets the highest fine. And in
mm.
the first millennium, in England, for instance, if you injure a woman, you have to pay a higher fine than if you injure a man.
Ah, that's interesting, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
compared to the going back into the late medieval period again, where women are pretty much treated just way after the Black Death is finished,
yeah.
and you go into the Renaissance and stuff where women are treated terribly again.
Yep.
Especially the early modern period,
Oh
modern period.
God, terrible.
Jesus,
Jesus.
I don't think there's any other era where women are treated as where I know we were just talking about the Magdalene women in Ireland in the 1960s and stuff, where women are treated very bad in Ireland. But compared to the early modern period, especially around 1640, where you have entire German villages where the women are
Yeah,
all just wiped out. It's and people like this entirely like it was historian I worked with, not historian I worked with, the academic I was under when I was in University College of Cork. He points out that there isn't a book trying to scratch their head and wonder what the hell went on. There's entire libraries dedicated to trying to ask the question, why did these German men start burning all of their women? And I know they're
right.
branded as witches, but it's insanity. It truly
It,
is. The treatment of women, especially around 1640, completely insane.
yeah, in the 30 years war, it's real rough. It's
Yeah.
it's really rough. So Cam actually makes a good point, and I will say why this doesn't actually completely explain it. Kevin, sorry, Cam. I'm sorry, Kevin. Kevin, I don't know why I said Cam. Oh, because I'm watching a show that has a character named Kevin. Because she can make more babies, men are more disposable.
Mm.
Yes, that is part of it, but women are always able to make more babies. There are just times when that's considered more valuable than others. So, for instance, in 15th century Italy, women are still the only ones capable of making babies, and yet they are considered an economic burden
Yeah.
than an economic contributor to a family. So it goes more deep than just they're the only ones who can make babies, because despite that being a constant throughout history, the value of women actually still wanes and waxes. Yeah.
But I think that's interesting as well because just after the Justinian plague, that's where Saint Bridget also finds Christianity as well. And you have the founding of Kildare's monastic settlement, Saint Bridget's monastic settlement, and Saint Bridget becomes the dominant saint in Ireland. And like even today, like we still put around Saint Bridget crosses here, there, and everywhere in Ireland. So that's interesting that you're saying all that stuff when at the same time one of the biggest I suppose Roman Christian cults that are in Ireland at the time is Saint Bridget's kind of monastic settlement, which is a very much a monastic settlement dominated by women. So it's
Right.
interesting that even in Ireland, women start to dominate the economics and finances of Ireland, the clergy of Ireland, and stuff. And don't get me wrong, it's not like men have completely disappeared, but it is interesting that after the Justinian plague, as you said there, my brain is ticking away. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you're right. Actually, the women are in the center of the monastic settlements. They're involved with not just the religious aspects and the religious interpretation, but you also have women involved with the economic and finances in the monastic settlements as well, because Clonmacnoise is the center of a lot of trade that's going on with the wider Irish world and the world around it as well. And guess what? You're finding these women who are, they're members of, royal houses and stuff who are retiring to these monastic settlements. So they would have spent their 20s or so in a marriage relationship. Their husband would have died because of A, B, and C within some, blood feud or something. And
Right.
then they quote unquote retire to a monastic settlement. But it's interesting for me if you take Land of Mead, for example. Her husband, her second husband, when he retires off to Iona, like way off in the middle of nowhere. But when she retires to one of the main monastic cities, those city areas in the center of Ireland. And from there, she seems to take full control of all the finances that are going on. So I look at this and I'm like, when you say retirement, do you mean retirement from marriages? Like, because she doesn't seem to be
Right.
retired from work.
Right. Yeah. So exactly. So they talk about. So this is the term that often crops up in English when they talk about. Funny, not men. They never talk about men in this way when the men go to the monastery. But when they talk about women joining a convent, they talk about them retiring to a convent.
Mm.
Where you are correct, they are not retired in any conventional sense of that word.
Yeah.
It's almost like so. But I think it comes. So I think it comes from actually the original etymology for the win. The original meaning of the word to retire, which comes from the French retirer, which
Mm.
means to withdraw.
Yeah.
So they're withdrawing from the secular world and moving into the sacred world of the convent, which also involves a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I think, yeah, you're right. They're not retiring. There's no retirement. It's literally they will work until they die or they can't lift a hand anymore, and then they will die.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Because the person she would then, because I know this is the giveaway here, because the person she starts working with, who isn't retired by the way, there's never a retirement, but I think that's because she's a pagan, is Aid the Deep-Minded, who is insanely famous in Icelandic sources and stuff. But she originally started off in Dublin with Olaf the White. But it's very interesting that she is located in Dublin when Olaf the White and Ivor the Bonus go off and start fighting in massive wars in Britain, and also some political fighting in Ireland,
mm,
because they're very much connected with the Irish politics. Not in a we're going to take over Ireland kind of way, but more or less with the the cattle raiding, and also with alliances with Leinster and stuff, and also fighting against Leinster's rivals. They're part of the political movement there. So Ivor the
mm.
Bonus and Olaf the White, they're never in Dublin. Like, this is meant to be going into the economic golden age. And a
Right.
lot of the times people say, oh, it's because, Ivor the Bonus is bringing back all this wealth, which is true to a certain degree, especially slaves. But the person who's in Dublin the whole time is Aid the Deep-Minded. And when Aid the
I
Deep-Minded,
want to pause you there. I just love Irish epithets.
go
Ed the
on.
deep-minded. It's just
Yeah,
great. Ed the Deep-Minded. Like that's great. That's fantastic.
yeah. And this is the same period as Land of Mead is located she's retired in Clonmacnoise, right? So she's connected to Aid, the deep-minded. And I know 100% that those two women are pretty much doing the economic golden age. When all this stuff is
Right.
going on and the money needs to flow around the place, it's these two women that are probably meeting up every Sunday and, doing all the paperwork to each other. This money goes here. Land the
Right.
deep-minded, I have a theory that she educated Aid of Mead, that she was like, oh, this should go there. And she was teaching her how this system worked. And she would
Mm,
have been taught, I have a theory, she probably taught by another nun had taught her. And then she was teaching her tricks to her. Because when Aid the Deep-Minded is kicked out of Ireland later on, when the Eamers monopolized the trade in Dublin, she's kicked out, and her, what was it called? They were called the Fall, what is it called? The Fine Gael. I think we'll kind of call them Fine Gael for now. Somebody, what was it? Kevin's going to correct me now in a second. But the Fine Gael, anyway, they get kicked out of Dublin. And I'm watching the comment section to wait for Kevin to correct me. But the Fine Gael, they get kicked out of Dublin. And they have to immigrate up north, up to Iceland. And guess who sets up all the trade ports in Iceland? Aid to the deep-minded
yeah,
does.
the Deep-Minded. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's actually a pretty well, okay, for me as a woman who's interested in seeing myself reflected in history in some kind of way. She's one of my heroes, right? Like
yeah.
she really she's a pioneer, literally. You know,
Mm,
she sets off for this island that is purported to be a place where people can be free and, control their own
that's
destiny.
exactly it. Yeah.
But the reality is that any place that's free and where you can, this is real estate talk, this is realtor talk, right? Anytime someone describes a house as a place where you can be free to express yourself, I'm like, ooh, that house needs some work.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So the idea that Iceland is this place where you can be free means it's not developed.
Mm,
Right? It's not developed, which means she's going into this place. I'm pretty certain with the name, an epithet like Deep-Minded, she knew that there was going to be a lot of work
yeah.
to basically build civilization there. And
Mm,
yet she does, this single woman, right? She goes off and leads
yeah.
this ragtag expedition basically to set up. And then she sets up a homestead. She ends up being one of the leaders in the community. I mean,
Mm.
it's almost fairy tale level stuff, but it's
Oh, yeah.
real.
She is so educated. Like, and you have to remember, all that trade is linked back into Dublin again. So, although we
Yep.
have this idea that she burns all her bridges and just goes off to Iceland, that couldn't be the case because her trade is still going down into Dublin. So, although that
Right.
it seems to be a level of, her side of the family not getting on with the Eamers, they still needed a level of middle ground there, and there's still connections there. But I also believe as well is that there must be a form of communication between the Irish dynasty that's dominating Ireland at the time, the Eamers, and Aid, the Deep-Minded's family as well, especially later on when we have stories like Olaf the Peacock, who
Mm.
he's not just an Icelander. He's going around, and it says it in the story that he's dressed very Irish. He's in very much Irish clothing. And the reason why he's dressing very Irish is because his mother is a princess. And I do believe that she's related because it keeps saying the Northern Irish King, because the problem with this story is it's taken from an Icelander's perspective. So
Right.
they
Right.
probably didn't know who these,
Well,
these families
well, and
were.
also I think the manuscript from which that comes actually dates to the 13th century.
Yeah, there's that
So
as well.
it's also one of these later tellings or retellings of history. So yeah, you should definitely take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it's the problem. I had same problem with Njal Saga as well, because Njal Saga is meant to be set
Yeah.
around just another 100 years again after that in 1014, but it was documented and written down in the 13th century. And
Yeah.
it's funny because when I was reading it, I didn't date it at all. I just didn't think, because I was only a second year or something in university, so I never thought about reading it from the context of the writer. And so I was
Mm.
reading Njal Saga. And then suddenly, because I was doing living history at the time as well, And suddenly they're in the boats and they all take out pole arms from the 13th century. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing with these pole arms? What the hell? So you're bang on right. You do have to look at it from the perspective of the 13th century, because a
Yeah.
person from the 13th century, like, I know I'm using war for the example, it would be like these days when we look at the Victorian era, and, a child, for example, would think of a gun. He'd think of like an M16 with the machine gun. Da, 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 da. He
Yeah.
wouldn't have any understanding of a Victorian gun. It just wouldn't come into
Yeah.
his mind. So when people think of spears and weapons, they think of spears and weapons of that era, not of
Yep.
the era of the Viking Age. And so when I
Yep.
was going through, I was like, what the hell? But yeah, you're bang on right. You need to look at it from the perspective, and then sometimes kind of write it back. Okay, so they're from this era, but what's their interpretation of that era? How was this information handed down to them? And it is funny because I do believe that a lot of these characters in the sagas existed, but you can feel that kind of Chinese whispers inside of there.
Yeah, it's always looking for the core. It's like the Iliad, for
Yeah.
instance, is a prime example. You can
Mhm.
actually tell which parts of the Iliad are original to Homer, or older, like not even original to Homer because he wrote in the 8th century BC, are older than BCE, sorry, are older than he is. For instance, when he talks about the armor that Agamemnon owned, he talks
Yeah.
about the boar tusk helmet.
Mm.
And so we know that Homer was definitely working from some older, much older story or poem or song, or even, God forbid, a written source, because he's talking about an actual Bronze Age set of armor that had been long gone, centuries no longer in use in the Peloponnese by the time Homer comes along. So, sometimes you can find those kernels if you're familiar enough with the material culture from various eras. You can kind of, this section of the saga probably dates to this era because they're talking about this kind of weapon or this kind of garment. This part of the saga, yeah, it's got pole axes, so no.
Yeah. That's the nail on the head, especially for me. Like, that was a huge, massive giveaway. Which does actually remind me, we can, because I think we covered everything when it comes down to the two people from Africa. There's nothing else you want to expand on there, do you?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, it's on those that particular find. I think I just know. So not later on, later in history, for example, they've been investigating these Black Deaths. So let's move from the Justinian plague to the Black Plague of the 14th century, the second mass world pandemic event in Eurasia, anyway, that completely reshaped civilization. Right. So they've and researchers in England have been investigating these cemeteries, and they have been doing increasing DNA testing, which is why this evidence is increasingly coming to light, right? Because when a lot of these cemeteries were excavated for the first time 40, 50 years ago, there was no DNA testing at all.
Yeah.
Now there is, and so they're testing. And so they actually found several people in a 14th century plague cemetery, end of 1440s, early 1450s. And I think my brain is telling me Smithfield, but don't hold me to that. My cat's absconded with my notebook. But I'm pretty certain it was Smithfield. And there were at least three bodies from this cemetery that had sub-Saharan, and I think it was West African DNA. Again, the same not the same DNA markers as the 7th centuries, but the same idea, right?
Yeah.
So here we have these mid 14th century English people, presumably because they're in an English cemetery, so they must be English, right? That's the assumption. And yet, one of them was a descendant, and the other was actually West African. So they were pretty certain it was a family group, like mother, daughter, kind of thing, which is sad because it probably means most of the family died from the Black Death, but also that's a common occurrence at the time. So
yeah,
they're increasingly doing these sorts of tests, and the more of this evidence is coming to light.
And it definitely gives us a bigger, wider world because we're quite educated at this point with the arrival of the Mongolians. So anytime somebody was like, "Oh, well, that's Mongolian DNA," people are like, "Oh, because of the scourge that came in and they wrecked everything up, especially in Poland and Hungary and stuff." That's kind of
Right.
the image we have. But
Yeah.
when we think of West African traders coming in, because we don't cover the topic enough, we start to get this idea that, especially from propaganda and stuff, of people just outright denying it and just thinking to
Yeah.
themselves, well, Africa didn't exist, so that's not
Yeah.
possible.
So
And it's like, Jesus Christ.
we're,
But at the
we're,
same time, it doesn't help when people have agendas and are like, well, that just proves everyone's black. And it's like, okay, that doesn't work either, guys.
that's yeah, exactly. It's like it's and especially God, if you go to places like, or not go to places, if you discuss geographies like, oh, I don't know, Egypt. Um, you have the on the one end, it's all Egyptian pharaohs were all sub-Saharan African and black,
Mm.
or all Egyptian pharaohs were Greek and white. You're like, no, neither of those things is true. There were absolutely Nubian pharaohs who
Mm.
reigned with the double crown, Upper and Lower Egypt. And if you look at their statues, you're like, yeah, that is not someone from Northern Africa. That is someone from getting towards Sub-Saharan Africa, right?
There's
But
massive connections, especially for Egypt. Like Ethiopia is only down the road from Africa,
yeah,
and there's huge mythology, and not just mythology wise, but also, and when I say mythology, I mean
records. There's
semi-history. Like, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it,
yeah.
there is even from a semi-historical way. It talks about Ethiopian princesses
Hmm.
having these massive romantic relationships with these Egyptian, the emperor, what are they called again?
Pharaohs,
Sultan Pharaohs, that's the
pharaohs,
one.
the
And
pharaohs.
what was it called? So they have these big romanticized semi-historian relationships, but we also, as you said there, historical records because of periods of peace and various sort of political reasons. We have marriage alliances with Ethiopia that's literally just down the road with Egypt and themselves, but also up the
Right.
road as well. Egypt is literally the center of all of this stuff. Like, there's a reason why Rome spent so much resources
Well,
wrestling, not just trying to physically take Egypt, but then wrestle amongst themselves to try to pin down Egypt. Like, straight away, when after Julius Caesar dies, there's this massive
oh
panic and
yeah.
rush to try to recapture Jerusalem amongst the Romans. The Romans are literally trying to pull and wrestle because they need that connection. And this is another thing we completely ignore as well. Not only because of all the grain that Egypt was producing at the
Yeah,
time,
it was
but
it was
also
the breadbasket of Rome. It really
mm,
was.
it really was like, and then on top of that as well, that trade goes straight into India. And it's only recently that people
Right.
have started to look into, and oh my God, the research is absolutely so
It's
thrilling for so many people because that trade link then goes into India. And at the time, India was
yep.
having a golden age with, we literally talked about this last week. And the name is out of my head.
Yes. Ashoka? No.
No, it's
Is that
that city
Ashoka?
again. It could be one of the dynasties in that area, but because I'm very ignorant when it comes down to this place, it's in Cambodia, and it
Oh,
is
you're
the
talking about. Oh no, no, no. That's okay. You're talking about Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat is
that's the
like
one.
15th. Angkor Wat is 15th century, so that's way after the Romans.
Isn't there a massive trade connection between India and Cambodia at that time, though?
Well, yeah, I
Uh,
mean, yes, but it's not Angkor Wat. It's
yeah,
something. It's something else. But I mean, China. Like this is
mm,
when the Silk Road
true,
starts.
very
Most
true.
people
Yeah,
don't realize the Silk Road is a BC thing.
mm,
It's not a medieval thing. It starts during Persia. Persia kind of kicks the Silk Road off, actually.
mm.
And then Rome kind of ends up horning in on that whole. Well, Greece, Alexander does, and then Rome does. And then, the first silk actually arrives in Rome, I think, in the first century BC, second or first century BC is when the first Chinese silks arrive.
Yeah,
And
it's very
so, yeah,
true.
that
You
connection, that sea connection through the
mm,
Red Sea to India, like you're talking about, is super important. It's
yeah.
super important.
Kevin, you're bang on right as well with Ethiopia. In the early medieval period, there is the Copt. So this actually pops up in our literature. I think there may be a few Coptic crosses from the Egyptian Ethiopia area. And then it goes into the whole conspiracy thing to do with the ark and everything. But regardless, I think there's a few effigy crosses in the early medieval Ireland dotted around Ireland that you can be walking by and go, what the hell is this Coptic cross doing here? So not only do we have Byzantine crosses, but sometimes they're scratching their head going, what the hell is this Coptic cross doing here? Because the Coptic Christian church is slightly different to the interpretation of the Byzantine interpretation of Christianity and, of course, the Roman interpretation of Christianity, right? Coptic is very, very interesting because then if you look at the earlier versions of Tundle's vision and then what influences, that whole lot of literature and stuff, it seems to be heavily, the language in it seems to be heavily influenced by a Coptic interpretation. Yep. And there also seems to be a Coptic Christian interpretation that seems to influence insular Christianity. The person who specializes that is Dr. Katrina. I can't remember. Oh, I'm so bad right now. I can't remember her surname. But Dr. Katrina up in University College of Cork, she specializes in the influence, what she can spot in the literature, because she's a genius when it comes down to understanding early Irish literature from a linguistic interpretation. But she can spot, her eye can spot the influences of Coptic literature into the old Irish literature. And it seems to be from her interpretation, and she very much aggressively defends this, there definitely seems to be a Ethiopian, Egyptian, because at the time, Ethiopia was in the middle of its own golden age as well. And it was one of the earliest areas to take on Christianity.
It was. And they come at it weirdly. Like they convert to Judaism centuries before. And then Christianity comes along and they're like, well, this must be the next natural step for our people. So I think they're one of the earliest polities to adopt it as the official state religion. Long before Rome, Rome even thinks about it, right? Rome is still persecuting some Christians who are doing stupid things. And Ethiopia is like, we are now a Christian kingdom.
In the middle of going into a golden age. So just as Rome is going, quote unquote, into a dark age, and you have the collapse of Rome and all that stuff, the Irish are getting in contact with these Coptic people. And God, it really drives you into a level of imagination, because if you have, because at the same time you have literature that's popping up and telling what the Irish monks are screaming at each other, we need to go to the edges of the world. So they start to build monastic settlements quite literally on the edges of the world. And they keep repeating Moses's, if you look at a lot of this literature, it talks about, going out into the desert for a certain period of time. And they have a lot of this imagery from Moses and stuff about, the people wandering the desert and all that stuff. That kind of, the way it's written, that style is kind of repeating itself in Irish literature. And so it seems that this is the same period that they're getting in contact with the Coptic Christians in Egypt and Ethiopia. And because we have so much bloody literature missing, it'd literally your imagination could get so excited to see what kind of conversation the Coptic Ethiopians would have had with the insular Christians in Ireland. Would have just been so interesting, especially when they're talking about Moses and stuff. Like what kind of interpretation they would have had would have been so fascinating.
Well, yeah, because the crown of Ethiopia traces itself back to Solomon, right? To the Queen of Sheba and Solomon. So they view themselves as one of the tribes of Israel, basically. They've got some very interesting relics and some very interesting mythology, catechism.
And it's so fascinating because I wasn't clicking there as you were saying West Africa. It's the comment section pointed out there. Geez, there's an insane amount of written literature to connect us to Ethiopia. So never mind West Africa. Ethiopia is where you want to be having this conversation right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, West Africa is easier to get to from medieval Ireland, but those trade routes, if you ever look at a proper map with all of the common trade routes, mapped out, charted out, it looks like a super highway system, right? Europe, you can just see these connections. You've got where the land ends and the ocean begins is where the ports are, and those ships sail. And people are more likely in the Middle Ages to take a ship than they are to go over land, because it's way safer to take a ship than it is to go over land, and it's faster, right?
Yeah.
That's why you get people, ships leaving from, well, not Florence, but Livorno, which was Florence's port city in the 15th century, and they're going through the Gates of Hercules, up Spain and Morocco, heading up the Atlantic coast, crossing the Bay of Biscay, as horrible as it is, and going to Ireland. And of course, they're usually stopping in Lisbon. They're stopping in Lisbon, usually refreshing and changing ships and then continuing onward. But, you've got these connections. It's not hard to just keep going south past the Gates of Hercules and just go all the way to West Africa,
Yeah, that's
right?
it.
It's not hard. You just have to not go during hurricane season, which every sailor worth their salt would have known when the right seasons were. So,
Oh, big time. Yeah, because we were even covering that the other day on when we were doing my Banner Road playlist thing. They were talking about the fact that you have a lot of those sailors are very switched on to the weather and stuff,
yeah.
especially going through the different seasons and years and stuff. What else do I need to be? Oh, I was gonna bloody say something onto your West
Oh,
African there, but it's gone completely over my head.
well, while you think of it, Kevin has a good comment. Perhaps some people far away might have wanted to go on a pilgrimage to the land of saints and scholars. 100%. And
Yeah, that's what I want to say as well.
what most people don't realize is that those pilgrimage routes are not monodirectional. We know that, for example, people in Spain were making pilgrimages up to St. Patrick's Purgatory. There's a fantastic travel log from the late 14th century by a Catalan viscount from Catalonia. And he travels all the way up to Ireland, and he travels all around Ireland, and he records all the things he sees and eats and hears and does there. But he's going ultimately to St. Patrick's Purgatory. That's his goal. And he's from, as Philip would say, a fancy part of the world, right?
Yeah.
late 14th century Catalonia is very sophisticated and very well developed. And he's going up to Ireland. His travel vlog is very interesting about Ireland, by the way. It's some of our best evidence for 14th century Irish clothing, Gaelic Irish clothing, comes from this viscount, right? But the more important part of that is that clearly St. Patrick's Purgatory was a common pilgrimage destination for people well beyond Ireland. So if you've got Catalonians making their way up to distant Hibernia, as the Romans called it, Ireland, right? And we know we have Irish people going on pilgrimage to Rome and to Compostela and to other pilgrimage sites throughout Europe, then why wouldn't they also possibly make a pilgrimage even further afield?
100%.
You know?
Yeah, I think once you explain these trade routes and stuff perfectly, it makes all perfect sense. I think the problem is a lot of times when we look at the media side of things, I think the problem is the media itself is very ignorant. And so it
Yeah.
jumps to these wild conclusions. And I'm
Yeah.
looking at these newspapers and stuff, and I'm like, what the hell are they on about? Like, how explain to me how somebody, for example, how somebody from West Africa could have made their way up to the north and then over from the north over to Iberian Peninsula and then to Ireland. That makes no sense. Why would somebody wake up one day and decide, oh, I'm just going to be Irish today? But I think definitely the way that we've explained it, that, okay, so you have a sudden collapse in all this trade routes. You have a trader from the west of Africa or even Ethiopia, for example, somebody who's looking
Right.
to look at the religious sources and stuff. As we point out there, Ethiopians are looking at Ireland. They're finding out from traders that Ireland has gone to Christianity, but they have their own interpretation. And they have because at the time, Ireland had a lot of Western Christian literature, and the Ethiopians are just excited about this. So there's surviving literature because it hasn't been burned yet and stuff. Let's go off, and especially we see that with both Moses and what was it called? Various other sources that tell you to go into the world, venture into the world. So the Ethiopians, as you guys are pointing out there about pilgrimages to the likes of Armagh and stuff, 100%, especially if Armagh is, as the traders are saying, this great pilgrimage site. If you're an Ethiopian of the 7th and 8th century, 100% get out there. So not only do we see an opportunity for people from West Africa to rebuild these trade links. But we also have people from Africa as well looking at this from a pilgrimage perspective, not just to get there and pray, but also get a hold of literature, because I need to widen my spiritual experience,
Right. Good question. What's the name of the Viscount from Catalonia? How can we access his travel vlog? Thanks. So, Carmel, that's a great question. So I was just racking my brains trying to remember his actual name. I'm pretty certain his first name was Ramon. And I'm sorry, I completely blanked on his name. Like literally, I have all these fantastic notes that I take on everything I read, because I read so much that I want to make sure I remember everything I read. And I have not been able to find that notebook today, but I do mention him by name in the video I did for Philip on medieval Irish clothing. So Irish clothing from the 14th and 15th centuries. So if you check out, or if you're one of my channel members, I've included it there as a freebie. If you check out Irish medieval history and look up, I don't know what did we call it? I don't remember what we called it, but I do.
I can quickly look it up for you. Just a second.
I mentioned if I do that on my phone, we're going to lose the stream again, so I can't.
No, I can fly over there.
Yeah. If you go to Philip, maybe he can pop the link in the chat. If you check out my video on 14th and 15th century Irish medieval clothing, I reference our good Viscount quite heavily, and I provide the name of his actual travel vlog. It is available digitally, and it's transcribed. I don't remember if it's translated because I speak Romance languages. So I think it's been translated. At least that section has definitely been translated, because it's fascinating, because he talks about the court of King O'Neill. He refers to him as King O'Neill. Again, applying his late 14th century Spanish or Catalonian understanding of politics and political structures to Ireland, right? So he talks about the court of King O'Neill. And he talks about going there and being hosted there. He was welcomed as a guest. Good old medieval Irish hospitality, still going strong in the 14th century. And he talks about how everyone is naked. But the funny thing about it, he then talks about the clothes that they are wearing. So in his mind, the amount of clothing they're wearing is not sufficient to be properly dressed. But he talks about, the men wearing tunics and, but no underwear, no undergarments, and the women basically just wearing an undershirt and a cloak, what he considers an undershirt and a cloak, but no real dresses. It's very interesting. So if you check out that video, you can see more details. And I'm like, God, I know his name. Like, I know his name, but it's somewhere here in the back of my brain and no longer here in the front. So
I have that problem all the time. It's grand. And on top of that as well, it is, if you go down to Irish medieval history, then click from home to videos, click on videos, scroll down to, it's titled 15th century Gaelic Irish men's clothing with creative Contessa. It's there. And you can also just type it into search as well, and it'll pop up as well. And that's 15th century Gaelic Irish men's clothing with creative Contessa. Should pop up straight away. If it doesn't pop up straight away, definitely tell me, and I'll start nagging and annoying YouTube again, because the algorithm's a bit of an annoyance that way.
It is. We hate the algorithm so much. We really do. It's so awful.
It's only a problem when YouTube itself doesn't even know what it's doing. Compared to when you compare it to the likes of TikTok and Instagram, which have it's not the fact of they don't know what's going on, they just have their own agendas over Instagram and TikTok. YouTube, on the other hand,
they're pushing different kinds of things.
It's a complete agenda game. Anytime you talk to the staff and stuff in TikTok and Instagram, you're like, okay, why is this doing that? They're just like, and it's the agenda. It's like whatever they have planned. And then you talk to the staff on YouTube, and it's just a circus. There's no, like, people try to make out that YouTube has an agenda. I've talked to the staff on YouTube. It's a circus. They don't even know what's going on today.
No, there's no intentionality to it. Yeah. And with AI, probably the algorithm has now achieved sentience. Yeah. So
no, it's YouTube. Yeah. It's just I have to bitch. Even I'll probably end up bitching again to them on the 21st of this month.
Oh no!
And anytime, what's that?
have they demonetized you again?
No, I'm
Oh,
monetized,
thank
but the
God.
thing is they. Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna bitch about them. So I have money built up over time, but instead of just being in one account, they have it in multiple accounts. I'm like, why is it in multiple accounts? Well, instead of just like paying it into the one account, we decided to make an all new account and just put money in that. And we've done this multiple
Why?
times to your account. And I'm like, this was only, what was it, 2 weeks ago? And I was like, okay, can you merge all of them together? And he was like, okay, I'll get back to you. 2 hours later, he gets back to me and he's like, yeah, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to
I
merge all these
don't
accounts
know
again.
how to do that.
Yeah. He went to specialized. This is why he took 2 hours. He said he'd email me back and everything because he needs to talk to a specialist. He didn't know how to do that, which is, I was like, okay, fair enough. Maybe he's new or something. And he gets back to me and he was like, I don't know how to merge these accounts together. So someone else, not just someone else, groups of people had my money. And because I was moving, quote unquote, moving, I was
Right.
in Japan already for about 2 years. But because I was, quote unquote, to them moving, they decided to make multiple accounts. Instead of just putting it into my Japanese account, they put it into multiple accounts. Every time I got paid, they just would make a new account to be like, oh, well, you can move the money over later. So now they had multiple accounts that they made themselves.
There it
They
is.
forgot they did this, by the way. Oh, nice.
There it is.
Text
Thank you,
message.
Kevin. Ramon
Kevin
de
is just in.
Perelos. Yeah, that's it.
Um,
Perelos. Yep.
but anyway, so 2 weeks ago, I said it to them. Why can't you just merge it all together? They said they couldn't. He said he didn't know how to, and then he said it should in the 21st just kind of all come together, as in the payments from those accounts should just go into my main Japanese account that I
Oh,
created, by the way.
it is astounding how nothing is possible, but somehow it happens, and then it's impossible to fix it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's literally you. Oh my god, it's such a circus. It is crazy. They don't even know how they're going to work their own. There's like so many bugs in shorts. It took them ages to separate shorts and long form videos. Like
Yeah, that's
TikTok,
true. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That was
like
nightmarish. That
because they couldn't
transition was rough.
understand. Oh my god, they couldn't understand their own what was it called, coding. There's so
Yeah.
many young staff in there that don't understand any of the coding that's going on there. And don't get me wrong, at the same time, I'm like, well, they have 4 years basic training in universities, and then it looks to me they're just thrown in there. Where it seems
Yeah.
to me, TikTok and Instagram, there seems to be a certain level of, okay, so this is what you do in this situation. That's what it seems to me. YouTube, they just get their staff members and are like, oh, good luck. So
Good.
no, go on.
No, it's awful.
Yeah. And then every once in a while they pretend that, oh, our agenda is the blue agenda. We're part of the blue propaganda agenda. No, YouTube,
There's no. There's
you don't know what's
we
going on.
we almost wish. I almost wish that there were a plan, because then it would be
Yeah.
organized, but it's
Yeah,
not.
right.
So good question. Does the color violet appear in Irish clothing? Okay, so first off, which era are you talking
Oh
about
yeah.
specifically? Because it's the Ireland clothing wise is not a monolith. Fashions change, and sometimes rapidly, and what is fashionable or possible in one era may or may not be in another era.
Yeah.
If violet, I mean, yes. So it is in the first millennium we have some Sharia laws. We have dress codes that actually say that violet is a color reserved for the high kings, right? Like
Mm. Yeah,
that's
so how the plan is, I have Fergus Kelly's Early Irish Law. Oh, I do. Here you go. Oh. So if you get this book and Early Irish Farming by Fergus Kelly, because Fergus Kelly's been working on these books for years, but the main baby is here, A Guide to Early Irish Law by Fergus Kelly. This is the first Bible you should buy if you're getting into early Irish or just literature full stop to do with Ireland, right? And in this, if we skip over and we look at the laws to do, hey presto, we get it. Oh no, this is anyway, regardless, if you look at the colors, what you get is this idea that we're talking about early medieval Ireland when slavery was
yeah,
a-okay, right? Different
right.
world, not like today.
Yep.
So if you
Different
were a
time, different time.
slave at the very, very bottom of society, right? You've been kidnapped by a rival clan. We just put it that way to simplify everything. So you're a white person, I'm a white person. You're taken from a different clan, and then you're forced into labor. You had to wear black and white. That was the only colors you were allowed to wear. And I'm talking about the early medieval period, because anytime I bring this up, somebody from the late medieval historian would be like, but I
Yeah,
thought black was an expensive color, you know? That's why Rachel is highlighting, like, okay, so what era are you talking about? Because as Rachel has pointed out about the black color, Rachel explained how they get black, but black in the early medieval Ireland is made of cheap. It's the terrible low status black color. It's not the expensive black color of the late medieval period, because in Ireland, black suddenly becomes a high status color in the late medieval period when you have the Tudor influence coming into Ireland. But that's not the case in early medieval Ireland.
And that's because in early medieval Ireland, black is not a dyed color. It's the natural color of the sheep's wool.
Yeah.
So and white is the same way. So it's not a question of being pure white or pure black. It's just basically undyed cloth.
Yeah.
That's why it's the lowest of the low. But the black they're talking about in the 14th and 15th centuries and 16th century is a dyed black, which is like this black here, right? So it's this super rich black, and it takes so much dye stuff and so many steps to achieve this black using natural methods that it is the luxury good par excellence, because you have to dye it. First you dye it red, then you over dye it with blue, or vice versa. And the really rich black uses kermes, which is crazy expensive. And then you have to do another dye bath with tannins in it to cement it all and turn it really black. So yeah, you're right. The black of the later Middle Ages has nothing at all in common with look or feel or cost with this, the slave black, we'll call it, of the golden age of Ireland. Yeah, it's just undyed. Exactly, Kevin. It's just undyed wool, minimally processed. I'm gonna bet it wasn't the most nicest thing to wear either.
Oh yeah, you knew the thing was, if you have to remember now, so we're going into the golden age of Ireland. The Justinian plague has wrecked everything up. You're going into someone's clan place. You need to know a mile away, that's a slave. I don't like that. It's horrible, because these are human beings treated as subhuman. They've been captured by another clan, and forced to do labor that is subhuman. Horrible stuff. Regardless, when you go into someone's ring fort, you were supposed to know that's the slave. But on the flip side of things, the way that the Brehon law was organized, and remember, this is the version we have of, it gives us an idea that there's a form of unity in Ireland, is because it's the same law that you see from the top of Ireland, agreed in Armagh. So they all came together in Armagh and agreed, okay, we're going to follow these colour laws. So from the top of Ireland all the way down to the bottom of Ireland, and that includes Dublin, by the way. If you were a Gál Gael, it's different if you were a foreigner, different laws again. But if you were a Gál Gael of Dublin, you were also supposed to follow these colour laws as well. And the Dublin people love it, by the way. They love these colour laws. If you go into literature, and I'll talk about it in a second, and you'll watch Rachel's teeth grind in a second, because I'll bring up that source again about the riveted mail and the silk. But regardless, the men of Dublin love this law, by the way. And what it does is that for every grade that you have up, you can have more colors in there. So obviously at the very bottom, you've got low level colors, very dark, very gray. But as you're working your way up, you get much more brighter colors until you're getting to the point of purples and blues and all these big bright colors, multi colors and stuff. That's why, because people argue about the usage of, as I would say, tartan, but Rachel will correct me there in a second. That's why some people argue that tartan would be in clothing and stuff. What's that, Rachel?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm having to plug my phone in before it dies a horrible death. So that's what I'm over here doing. I'm once more fighting with technology. I love you, technology, so much. But yeah, tartan, for those who are wondering, tartan is not a medieval word for anything like you would imagine tartan to be. Doesn't look anything like tartan. It was actually a really expensive silk, not patterned, but yeah. Sorry, I'm just fighting with technology as always. So there was a good question. There was a good question here. Wasn't there a reason that red was cheap for Rome, and they had a cheap black too? So there is a cheap red. There is absolutely a cheap red, and that is madder. Madder is a
Oh, all right.
root. It's a
Yeah.
weed. This disembodied voice talking. Anyway, madder is a weed, and basically it grows. Wow, I have no Wi-Fi. It grows everywhere. It's yeah, it grows everywhere. And so that was the cheap red, but it didn't produce the kind of red that you see here,
Mm.
right? It produced, wow, my Wi-Fi doesn't want to connect. Why is this my life? Because we're literally, my device literally wants to die, but if I disconnect it from, no, this is awful. This red here would have been achieved with Kermes, which is a louse. That's basically a bug, right? Madder is a root, it's a weed, it's cheap. Anyone can get a rusty red out of it. You're not necessarily going to get that really nice red, though. The really nice red can only be achieved with Brazil wood or Polish cochineal or this Kermes. Black, Rome did not have a cheap black. Rome's cheap black was undyed black sheep, basically. That was their cheap black. They did not black.
Oh, slightly cut off there. Yeah, in the comment section, there is no Pacific tartan for clans. Yeah, you're perfectly right. It's until the
Nope.
20th century. Oh, you're back again. Oh, you're gone again. But yeah, it's not until the 20th century that clans are given their own Pacific tartan. And oh, she's back
Okay,
again.
there we go. Yay, I made it with 1% of power left.
Jesus, that's lucky.
Seriously, because there's no plug anywhere near where I film. Because why would I need that? Yeah.
So you were talking about the red.
Yeah. So the reds. The last thing I don't know what the last thing you heard me say was this red here on this tapestry. This would be achieved with Kermes, which is a louse. It's a bug. The cheap red is this madder root. It's a green plant. You would never know it could produce any red until you rip it out of the ground and its roots are bright red. Well, they're very red anyway. But it's not going to achieve this kind of red. Its red is going to be a little rustier, a little less red, a little more towards orange. So that would have been the cheap red the Romans would have had. The purple that the Romans had, though, was Tyrian purple. And I suspect that the reason that violet was the color reserved for kings in first millennium Ireland is, again, those connections between the Eastern Roman Empire and Ireland, right? Because they were importing Tyrian purple from Constantinople, and then this is that amazing violet red that is legendary, but it costs so much to make just a tiny amount of Tyrian purple. Like you need 10,000 Murex snails to make a little tiny bottle of Tyrian dye stuff like this. So that's why I suspect that the purple that's being the violet that's mentioned in these laws, in these early Brehon laws, is probably the Tyrian purple. And yes, they were restricting it to kings because, it should be a sign of kingship, because it was a sign of kingship in Constantinople. Yeah. And starting in about the 2nd century AD, I think, in Rome is when that got reserved just for the emperors. So but that's not like all violets, right? It's in some cases it's a question of what does the word violet in the first millennium Ireland actually mean? Is that the same as what we think of as violet? But my suspicion is they were talking specifically about Tyrian purple, which, by the way, vanished in 1204 when the asshole crusaders, the Franks, sacked Constantinople, a Christian city, and took it over, and they destroyed the Tyrian production centers, and they never started again. So the last time that the world saw Tyrian purple until the modern era when we recreated it was 1204.
Yeah, the joys. But it's grand because the Ireland's golden age had already long collapsed by then. So
Right. It was the world was clearly on a decline anyway.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Golden age is gone.
Yeah, so Rex the Golden Doodle says there's a local mollusk found on the eastern Irish coast since Mesolithic era that produces the violet color. Yes, and I can guarantee you it's somehow connected to Murex. The problem, though, still is that it takes thousands of them to make enough dye to dye like a whole length of fabric. So the it's a very intense production process, and so I'm confident that the same thing applied. There are other things that can produce purple in Ireland as well. There's a lichen that produces a pretty decent purple that
Mm.
grows in Ireland, but it's not the same as
Yeah,
the, yeah,
because we often scratch our head and wonder about the woad as well. We've said that a few times as well. Why is it in Brehon law that, and it just loads of arguments and theories to why woad that's easily found in Ireland that makes the blue. Why is that in A Guide to Early Irish Law by Fergus Kelly and in Fergus Kelly's Irish Farming? Why is blue only used for the RIA? Why is it only used for the upper noble classes and stuff? That's quite strange as well. Like,
right, right. Question. That's a beautiful tapestry or painting behind you there. Oh, yes. Yeah. So this is a tapestry. This is one of the Lady and the Unicorn, La Dame à la Licorne tapestries from the Musée de Cluny in Paris. It's I didn't steal it. It's a replica. this is not the original, right? This is the sense of sound, right? The sense of hearing, because they depict, they're allegorical for the five senses plus desire. So yeah, this is one of my many replicas. I only own about 80 plus replica medieval tapestries that were purchased in desperation during COVID when I was trapped in New Mexico and wanted medieval things. So
joys.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways. So some berries and burnt seaweed ash would render a purple pigment too. So the problem with berry dyes is that they're what's called fugitive, which means they stain, but they don't last. They can be used as pigments for painting and illumination, but they don't work as dye stuffs for fabric because they just wash out eventually, really quickly. So yeah, you can definitely get colors from berries, but they don't work as dye stuffs.
The joys. They were just talking about a wee bit as well on tartan. Yeah, because of the way that it's kind of worded that by the time you get up to the higher levels, it kind of highlights a king that's very, multicolored, kind of very kind of bright, vibrant colors and stuff. And that's why some people would argue that he perhaps had tartan pants and tartan colors and stuff on. And you were saying that, it wouldn't even be considered tartan at the time. That was, as you had previously said, plaid and stuff, that, what especially for the early medieval period, what do you think they were wearing at that point? Do you think it was?
I mean, so everyone throughout Europe, we have archaeological evidence across first millennium Europe of fabrics that are woven with a warp and a weft in a different color, creating what people call a plaid, but wasn't called plaid in the Middle Ages, or a tartan, but wasn't called tartan in the Middle Ages, right? So that's dating back like to the 4th millennium BC. We have found textiles, not in Ireland or Scotland, by the way, that are woven with the weft in one color and the warp in the other color. And we have visual evidence of people in Catalunya, back to Catalunya, our Viscount Ramon de Perlos, right? He could have very well had a dapper coat, C-O-T-E, made in what we modern people would call a plaid or a tartan pattern. But it had nothing to do with clan affiliation. It was just fashionable.
Yeah.
Right.
It was the comment section that said it's not until about the 20th century that the commentator I can't highlight on my one, but clans didn't have their own patterns of tartan till like the 20th century, wasn't it? Yeah, 100%, but nail on the head. And even on top of that, although it does seem that what was it? Oh God, you literally just said the word there.
Tartan.
Plaid, that's the word. Plaid seem to be coming in and out of fashion constantly. Even isn't it far back as the Neolithic and Megalithic that we can find pants up around the north that has what was it called? Plaid in it. It's crazy.
Wait, I'm gonna pronounce it the way that's gonna make everyone angry. Sligo.
Sligo.
Sligo,
Sligo, that's the
right?
one.
I'm gonna pronounce it the medieval way, not the modern way. Yeah, so they actually, they excavated this suit of clothes that could date to the 14th or 15th centuries. They don't know because they haven't dated it. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ireland archaeology, for not doing your damn job.
I'm going to have those people on next week, so it's going to get worse with documentation.
Oh my God. Anyway, they
This
haven't
is
actually
just
dated this. They haven't dated this garment. And so there's
yeah.
debate whether it's 14th, 15th, or 17th century. But the chausses, as we would say in medieval French, or the hosen in medieval English, or the trews, also medieval English, Treweues, they are absolutely this gold and black and brown plaid pattern. And because they cut them on the bias, the pattern runs like this down the legs, because by cutting the wool on the bias, it creates a natural stretch. So they wouldn't have been baggy. But yeah, but then that's either the 14th, 15th, or 17th century Ireland.
Definitely. And you see, the thing is as well, is that we do know that they had plaid in Ireland in the early medieval period, but it was actually, the theory is the fashion actually came from Norway, because if we look at Norway, that's where a lot of movement is coming from Norway into Dublin with the Hiberno-Scandinavian fashion, which is a mixture between both the Irish and the Norwegians. But before then, as Rachel said at the very start, as the Vikings are going in, Ireland is having a big Byzantine Empire fashion trend. Ireland is in the middle of the Golden Age. It can bring silk in. Obviously the Vikings really help us go into an economic golden age. But at the time, Ireland is already in the middle of the golden age of the saints and scholars. As the Vikings go in, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like it was all a terrific party. You do have Vikings that go in and, burn as many monastic settlements as they can get a hold of. And at the same time, Ireland is in the middle of civil war between the men of Munster and the men of the Enel. So they're also deciding, oh, you like burning monastic settlements. I also like burning monastic settlements. And they start burning their monastic settlements as well. So that beautiful golden age of saints and scholars, that's going to quickly burn out soon, quite literally.
It's so nice when we find common ground in violence. That's so beautiful. So
especially with civil war during an invasion. That's always like thumbs up. That sounds like a brilliant idea. Let's burn society to the ground. So you do, don't get me wrong, you do have the end of the end of Ireland's golden age of saints and scholars. But it's replaced with the economic golden age. And from there, we start to replace the old, golden age, Byzantine, St. Patrick, all that kind of clothing of the Roman clothing, of the Roman silk. That all is gone now. That all gets replaced with the Hiberno-Scandinavian fashion. And with that fashion, we see the reintroduction of tartan coming in, or as we were saying there, plaid coming in from Norway, because the Norwegians actually reintroduced it. Looking at the archaeological clothing find, it's heavily believed that Norway brought that fashion back into Ireland. So Ireland is not wearing plaid in the early medieval period during the Viking Age because it's their tradition. No, their tradition is St. Patrick and the Romans and all that stuff. No, they're wearing it because it's a fashion trend, allegedly, coming in from Rome into Scotland and then into Ireland. That's the fashion trend that's coming in. That's reintroduction, the usage of plaid, which fits perfectly with the multicoloring of the early medieval period.
Yep. And the thing is that when you look at primary source texts from a past era, and you're looking at it in an old, archaic, and or obsolete language that no one speaks anymore as a native language, right? Like none of us can say that we are native speakers of Old Irish. No one is, because that means you would have to be born into a family that speaks it, right? So that means that it's very often that fundamental concepts are lost in translation. So we can pretend that we understand, well, this word means multicolored. They must be referring to a plaid pattern. No, they could be talking about, say, like a taffeta silk that is woven two colors, one in the warp, one in the weft, but it's satin woven so that you get this color changing effect. So that if you look at the fabric in this light, it looks like one color. If you look at it in this light, it's another. It doesn't mean it's stripes, right? You can be colorful and multicolored and it not be stripes, I guess is my point.
Yeah.
So, people, unfortunately, we're humans. We bring our biases to the table of interpretation and understanding. And that's why it's really important to try as much as we can as historians to step back from our
Mm.
assumptions, and try to get at the truth as much as we can.
Yeah, that's very true. And it doesn't help that I'm also very, very biased because, I just like Braveheart, I can't turn around and say, oh, well, I completely despise all that stuff because I do like tartan, So someone else in the comment section who's just like, yeah, but I like my tartan kilts and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I'm very much heartbroken myself when I see the lack of evidence in for example, 14th century Scotland during the period of the Scottish War of Independence. And
Not
then
there.
finding out, yeah, you see, this is the problem. Both
It's
the
not there.
Irish and the Scottish were they're very similar to what you see in France and Scotland at the time, with the
Yeah.
likes of the oh my God, you're going to correct me on this one. The type of tunics and stuff they had during the Scott. That's the one. Yeah.
Doublet, the doublet and the hosen.
Yeah,
Yeah. They've got coats. They've got, yeah.
yeah, we're not kicking around with 17th century great kilts, those big tartan blankets and stuff. It's just, don't get me wrong, as Rachel has pointed out before, there is a bit of light there with the brat. We do have brats at the time.
Yeah, everyone's got big ass cloaks that you can just wrap around your body like a tent. But that doesn't. It's not a kilt.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like,
not a kilt.
Yeah, see, you do love it. Like, I was even thinking the other day about like that image, and someone else said to me as well. They love that image of Mel Gibson with the big, massive Scottish claymore in the that kind of weird looking grey kilt he's got going on, and all the other stuff.
Yeah, looking like he's from Boudica's troop of anti-Roman strike force. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
But the whole, like, this is the magic of when it was being filmed in Ireland. When people criticize what he was wearing, he was, at the time, it was just everybody was falling in love because, the Irish people, we just came out of the Troubles. The Troubles literally just came to an end, and Mel Gibson rocks up and he wants to do a movie. So suddenly there's tons of money in the country. There's tons of excitement. And Mel Gibson is just grabbing random stuff, and there's just random stuff all over the place. And Mel Gibson, there's no historical thinking in there whatsoever. And that's why the movie is the way it is. It's not what's crazy about it.
Well,
it's
the movie, but the big storyline was not based on history. It was based on Sir Walter Scott's Highland chieftains, right? Like, it's not even based on actual historical records from the get-go.
Yeah.
It's based on a early 19th century romance novel. Right? It's not even based on real history. So from that perspective,
it's just the magic and the spark.
I mean, I can't hate it too much. I almost wish they just changed everyone's names just to be a little bit different and fantasy-like, and then there'd be no complaints for me, right?
Yeah, that's very true. It's just
if it had been Billiam Ballas and King Deddard, first of England, right? Of Dengland
people, yeah. No, what was it called? Braveheart. Braveheart's just a movie of 1997 in Ireland when Mel Gibson, an absolute lunatic from Hollywood, rocked up with these people who literally just finished fighting a long war, 30 years of war against the British, which was the Troubles. And suddenly Mel Gibson rocks up with endless amount of money, and he's there. They go in the middle of a field exactly like this. Mel Gibson, there's a film of it online. You can watch the making of it. And I've seen it. I was 5 years of age when all this was going on. Mel Gibson gets onto a ladder with a microphone and says, okay, guys. And he's all excited. Everyone's excited. And he's just trying to tell everybody what to do. And you have people trying to grab random clothes and chuck it on. It's like, in many ways, it was a disaster. But what keeps it all together and what you see when you watch the movie is the magic of excitement. That's what we love about it. And that's why Braveheart is a magical movie. Not that it's a historical movie. It's, complete fantasy. It's a fantasy made out by a guy on a ladder from Hollywood with a microphone saying, right, this is the plan now, guys. And this is what we're going to do.
An Australian, no less. Not even an American. An Australian. Yeah, right.
We didn't know that at the time. This guy is a big Hollywood guy with a microphone. That's what we were all thinking, like,
So Kevin has a comment that will get me to respond quickly. I bet anything their wives, women who fancied them, sewed up some pleats for them to more quickly wear those great kilts. So not before the 17th century, though. So here's the basic history of what becomes the great kilt. Um, Everyone in Europe has cloaks of some kind. They've got some kind of layer that they can wrap around their clothing when they go out and are outside and the weather isn't nice. And that cloak has different shapes across the eras. So there is no one Irish brat. There is no one Scottish plaid, right? So you need to divorce your mod idea from the get-go. It's a fashion garment. It's a practical garment. It's going to change in shape and design and use over the centuries, especially as other changes. Like there are lots of climate shifts throughout the 1,000 years that is the Middle Ages. So you've got this brat, right? And you've got this called a plaid. And by the way, plaid, Philip, do you know what the word plaid means? P-L-A-I-D.
I've explained it like 20 times now and I can't really
I mean, just the base, it's a blanket. It just means blanket. It is a Scots word, not a Gaelic word, by the way, for blanket. And so it literally describes what the function of this garment was. It was supposed to keep you warm. Now, in the 15th century, there's a massive climate shift that starts in Europe, and it's called the Little Ice Age, the Younger Dryas, I think it's called by climatologists, but don't hold me to that. The Little Ice Age, and it's getting colder and colder as the 15th century wears on. By the end of the 16th century, the first time we see a depiction of a Scotsman wearing a plaid as an outer garment. It's in the 1590s. And the depiction is not by a Scotsman, it's by a Dutch traveler, as always. The Dutch traveler. And that's why we have it still, because it was a Dutch traveler and he took his travel vlog back with him, and it did go up in flames during the iconoclasm of the Reformation, right?
Because we all love the Reformation.
Reformation for the loss. So it depicts a Highlander, as he called, and a Highlander's wife. The wife is also in a plaid. It's called an ariced. And I don't forgive me on that mispronunciation. I'm not. I wasn't able to find a reasonable pronunciation of ariced. Arisaid. That's the woman's version of the plaid, and she is dressed in fashionable Elizabethan clothing, but she's wrapped in this giant rectangular blanket that's broached in the front. No belt, no nothing. Just she's like a burrito. She's a fashionable lady burrito. And the man, the Scotsman, he is dressed, his plaid has been draped a little more fashionably than hers has, but it's still just belted at the waist and then just draped. There's no pleats. He's still wearing a doublet. He's still wearing trunkhosen. He's got long sleeves. They're fashionably pink. They have little flashes in them. His hosen are rolled down to his knees. So he attached his hosen from his lower hosen from his upper hosen so that they can roll down, and he's got bare knees, right? That's something Highlanders, they were crazy. I don't know what the hell is wrong with red legs. I don't get it. Like, seriously. It's like, why? Well, it's a statement of manliness. I'm so manly, I can just bear mine, even though it's minus 30 degrees outside, right?
Yeah, but I'm 60 legs, you know?
Yeah, but the point is that he's wearing clothes, complete late 16th century, fashionable at any court in Europe, basically, garments underneath of this blanket that has been belted, but there's no pleating at all. It's belted for convenience so that he can keep it on his body. And it's draped around him in such a way that he still mostly has use of his. So that's like the earliest depiction I've seen of what some people might call a great kilt, but it wasn't called that. It was called a plaid.
Yeah.
And it wasn't sewn at all. It's just a giant rectangle of fabric that can then be transformed into something else. Yeah.
Just jumping back into the comments section, we're going to end up jumping in and out of plaid because there's some brilliant comments to do with plaid as well that I would love to expand on, especially with Rachel being here as well, because we don't have Rachel tomorrow, so it'd be great to talk about some more plaid and then repeat everything again the following week because we're going to do another Saturday live stream with Rachel next week. But somebody, what was it, Jim O'Neill just added in, did you know that Mel Gibson was only 5'5"? When I was 5 years of age, Mel Gibson was a giant on a ladder. Look, you know what I mean? Like, so to me, he was, the giant Hollywood superstar. So maybe if I met Mel Gibson,
small man.
See, I didn't know that when I was 5. You remember, I was a midget when I was a child. Did you know that? What was it called? So Mel Gibson was a complete giant superstar to me, do you know. Back over to Plaid again. There is some mention in the, and see, this is very interesting as well, because this is where we get our definition of Celtic plaid is during the Iron Age. So there is a mention of Iron Age Britons and Collodians as liking plaid garments, but these
Yes.
were clothings made of checkered and stripping clothing,
Yes.
not kilts, and that
Yes.
went out during the and then during the Middle Ages. And yeah, I fully agree with you as well.
Yeah.
And I assume that's probably the fashion wave that went into Ireland as well, because that's what, when people say Celtic and Celtic culture, they're talking about that wave that goes from, it's not an invasion of Ireland or anything or into Scotland. It's more kind of a way, you know, a language and fashion wave that happens between Austria because of the sudden spark of the trade of the salt mines and stuff that goes from Austria over to the likes of Ireland and Spain and Scotland and all those areas.
Yeah.
And that wave brings in, and that wave lasts from around, it blurs from 1000 BC to about 300 BC. So definitely around about 300 BC to around 90 AD, you have what's called the Latin culture that comes in from, you know, the Gaulish regions and stuff into Ireland and Scotland. So there is no invasion, but you have a Latin wave. And in Ireland, it's referred to as Insular Latin. And that could have brought plaid into fashion from France into Ireland, not a Celtic invasion, okay? And then, as we pointed out, as you guys had pointed out there, going into the Middle Ages in Ireland, that fashion in Scotland and Ireland goes away again, because the fashion that dominates is, you know, the St. Patrick fashion, that kind of Byzantine Roman fashion starts to come back into Ireland, of the silks and so on and so forth. And the plaid fashion doesn't come in again until the coming of the Norse. So it's allegedly the Norse that brings back the plaid fashion back into Ireland. So it's not a case of, as you guys have pointed out as well, not a thing of clans having their own tartan, but constant on and off again waves of fashion that goes in and out. That happens to be a plaid fashion that works, you know, depending on what's going on both politically and fashion-wise into Ireland.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to note that the word Celtic does not refer to Ireland uniquely.
Yeah.
The Celts were a migratory nomadic people who started somewhere in Central Asia and migrated their way westward, right? So you've got Celtic settlements all across Europe before the Romans, right? Or about the same time as the Romans, in fact. And so we have textiles from various Celtic settlements in Austria, in Germany. Where I lived in Germany was like the heart of Celtic country. We had a beautiful Celtic chieftain's tomb that had been excavated near where I lived, with amazing gold finds from like the 4th millennium BC, right? So we've got textile finds from across pre-Roman Europe and after pre-Roman Europe that are from Celtic settlements. They're plaid, but that's because when you are weaving fabric on an upright loom instead of a horizontal loom, an upright loom, right? Like it absolutely makes sense. You're not necessarily, especially in that area, you're not necessarily going to have enough fibers in necessarily all one color. So you're going to put one color is going to be your warp, one color is going to be your weft, and that's just how you do it, right? It's not necessarily a question of fashion choice per se. In many cases, it's a question of practicality. And, you know, it's just how you do it. That's how you take advantage of a pre-industrial world. And the Roman Empire was industrial, by the way. Anyone who thinks otherwise doesn't understand how it's possible to have industry with just manpower. Yeah. Oh, Dilnoza's back. Dilnoza, welcome back. It's so lovely to see you again. It's been so long. Goodness. She's one of my super followers from Tajikistan, actually.
Oh, nice. I think you were saying about her before.
She's pretty awesome.
Very, very interesting spot. I bet she knows a whole lot about the Silk Road and stuff coming over.
Right. Yeah, she lives in the center of the Silk Road, basically. Yeah, Dilnoza, you literally live in the middle of the Silk Road. You are the connection of East and West. Nevis has a great comment. The standardization of tartans occurred mostly during the reign of Victoria. Yes, that is correct.
That's very true. But what's very, very interesting about Victoria, although she's referred to in Ireland, rightfully so, in my opinion, even to annoy you guys. She's referred to as the famine queen in Ireland because, God, herself and the administration in the
Jesus.
British Parliament completely mess up Ireland, and many, many people end up dying. But regardless, I could literally bitch about that all day. But it's very interesting that Victoria actually supported the the Celtic revival, as it was referred to. We always
Yeah.
have to
Yeah,
hear that.
it's this weird dichotomy, right? Like on the one hand, literally Ireland starves to death under her administration anyway. But
Yeah,
on the other hand, she's got this romantic attachment to all things Scottish in particular, right? But also
she's
this
rolling
fascination
around
for
in
Irish
bed.
things
Yeah,
as well.
she's rolling around in bed with a Scottish man. Like, what the hell? Like,
Mr.
you're
Brown,
literally, yeah.
Mr. Brown.
She's literally referring to Celtic people as subhuman one time. I think it's because she suffered from bipolar, wasn't it? Where one time
Well, I
she
mean,
was,
her husband, yeah, I mean, probably, but also, Albert, her love of her life, dies very
yeah,
unexpectedly and very young. And so that I'm confident that that had a massive impact on her. So yeah,
yeah. And
she
I'm not,
suffered from depression for certain.
yeah. Oh yeah, my mother highlighted that one because the thing is within my family, especially my mother's side of the family, there is true hate, generational hatred
Mm,
towards Victoria and towards Cromwell because of what they did to the people of your favorite place, Rachel, Sligo.
mm.
There's real hatred
Sligo.
there. So I'm not turning around and justifying what Queen Victoria did. I still think that's absolutely like to starve another human being today is absolutely
Well,
horrific.
and so I mean, it's more complicated than that because by the mid 19th century, the power of the actual crown was not like they didn't they it was a constitutional
Yeah,
monarchy. Well, sort of by that point, they don't really have a constitution, but the point is actually her prime minister and parliament that did all this horrible shit, right?
yeah, that's it.
She now, granted, she didn't seem to step up to make anything change,
That's
and
it.
that's where
Yeah.
I feel she failed, right?
Yeah, the whole big time. And even on top of that, this is the one that it was this week, one of the biggest tour guides in Dublin. He was interviewed on one of your, I think CNN and all that kind of stuff. They were all in Dublin this week and they interviewed him. And he turned around and he gave out about Queen Victoria because of the fact that the Turkish Sultan stepped in to send money to Ireland and she purposely blocked him because it would make her look bad,
Right. Yes,
and the fact she,
that's some
yeah,
bullshit right there. Yeah.
and the fact that even the Native Americans who were barely struggling at the time stepped up to send money to actually saved, the likes that money saved the
Yeah.
likes of my family and stuff. I'm here today, thank you to the Native Americans,
Yep.
not to Queen Victoria, who was literally referred to as the famine queen in Ireland. So yeah, as you said, they're very, very, very complicated. Of course, it's easy, especially when I was reared, to truly despise and hate her. But at the same time, you're dealing with a woman who had depression, and also, as you pointed out there, her husband passed away when she was how old? 20s or something, or 30s.
So let me see. When Albert died, she was in her 40s.
Mm,
So by
yeah,
the time the famine came along, that would have been, yeah, that would have been, she was born, the famine, yeah, 30 or 40s, yeah,
mm.
30s or 40s.
Yeah, it's quite bad. And on top of that as well, oh God, I have a very good point. I just bitch about the British while I'm trying to remember it because
Yeah.
at the
Well,
same time,
Reginald makes a good point.
mm,
Ireland still had plenty of food being grown, but it was being exported.
I was just about to say that.
Exported is a really strong word, or is
Yeah,
not a strong enough word. Rather, it was
yeah.
stolen
It was
and
outright
and
stolen.
sent to
Yeah,
England. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And on top of that, when people try, and this is where it gets even more disgusting, when people like my own family and stuff try to go out and fish, and we get asked this all the time. Why? I explained this in Okinawa as well. Some guy was like, "Why didn't you guys go fishing?" We were shot. The British soldiers would see us fishing and they would shoot us dead because that fish belonged to the British. And it was the
Yeah.
same thing if we went into the forest to try hunting, that belonged to the British lord and you were shot dead. No, not even like, oh, I'll try to explain myself or I need this food. No, you were just shot dead. It was that simple.
No,
So it
yeah,
really was. When somebody turns around and says that's a genocide, it was a genocide. Do you know what was
it
happening?
was.
You know, stealing both
Yeah.
the food. But yeah, complicated, and it's that's why it's so strange that at one hand she's doing this, and it's justified because the Irish are seen as lazy and subhuman. Like that even makes
Yeah.
any sense. But the reason why they were saying that from the British perspective is they weren't saying that towards the Irish. They were saying it towards the English. Hey, look, they're starving today, not because of what they're doing. It's because they're
Yep.
lazy. But you're hard
Yep.
working. You're the
Yep.
good hard workers. By the way, people who were also they were exploiting was their own English workers. Little
Oh yeah.
tiny 3-year-old
This
children being sent down chimneys. Like what the hell?
this is the era of Charles Dickens, right? So
Yeah,
this is when he's writing all of these novels exposing the horrors of the Victorian work system,
yeah,
and they're mobilizing attitudes towards poverty. So yeah, the English people of their classes were being treated, you know, differently as badly as the
yeah.
Irish were, right? They just the killing wasn't quite as direct on that side. Longer, slower term death, right? Like you
Yeah.
can die over several decades slaving away and not earning very much and being miserable and poor, rather than dying in a year of starvation,
Mm.
right? Like worse. I don't know. They're both pretty bad.
Yeah, that's why it does get very complicated when you're dealing with the later on. Maybe I'm going way too out there, but there is. I would never put hatred towards English people, not only because I lived in England for a good few years and know lots of really nice English people, but the English were also suffering as well. Granted, at least they had a tiny bit of food, but you still had people starving on the streets of London
Oh
as well.
yeah, all
Yeah,
over the
so
place. It was
yeah,
pretty gross. It
mm,
was a terrible. It was just a terrible time if you weren't rich. Like if
yeah,
you were rich, the 19th century is golden, baby.
mm,
But if you weren't rich, it was terrible. It was,
yeah,
you know, and people always they talk about the poverty of the Middle Ages, and I have to remind them, no, the poverty that you are thinking of is Victorian. It starts in the 18th and the 17th century. Well, actually, it starts in the 16th century with the Reformation and
mm,
the Enclosure Acts, and it just gets worse and worse as wealth is purposefully concentrated to the top. Right.
mm,
So yeah, it's the when people talk about in the Middle Ages, poverty in the Middle Ages was not widespread, and
mm,
there were many institutions to help alleviate it.
yeah.
So that weren't there anymore by the
Mm.
19th century.
Oh yeah, 100%. And on top of that as well, it's very interesting that you highlight that this all happens from around the Victorian period onwards, because it's also in the Victorian era that they re-edit their own medieval history, you know, but you get a
Yeah, they
completely
do.
different interpretation, yeah,
Yeah, they do.
of this is how you behave. This is how good Christian princesses behaved. This is how
Right.
good Christian knights behaved. You know, it's
Right.
all that kind of
And that's
rewriting.
I think that's when they start talking about the she wolves, right? Like
Mm, yeah.
of the, well, Queen Isabella, Edward II's queen. She was just a terrible person, and
Mm,
Margaret, Queen Margaret. She was just a terrible person. Henry VI's queen, and Ellen of Aquitaine. She was completely inappropriate, right? That's about the time that those myths really start going around, and
mm.
yeah, it's Victorian.
No, I would never
We
keep a working class. Yeah, go on.
no go on.
Sorry, there was a lag there. Oh yeah, there's a lag. Not reply to that comment there saying the English today cannot really be held to account. Yeah, when it comes down to the working class English, I wouldn't really keep them in account of.
Mhm.
You see, it's funny from a much more higher class English perspective because they're still living off the benefits that their ancestors had given to them. So it's much more complicated. But at the same time, I know many of these people. They're very friendly people to approach and talk to and stuff. But it is complicated when some of these guys have, pretty nice, attitudes and stuff. And some of them even support my own work and stuff. So it can be complicated. But at the same time, they're still living off the benefits that their, ancestors had given to them and stuff. So it is complicated where you have somebody who isn't they're basically not their great ancestor, but at the same time they are living off the benefits of their ancestors, so
Yeah.
it's complicated, but at the same
Yeah, I
time.
mean, intergenerational wealth is a big guarantor of success, right?
Mm,
It's a big factor towards success in your own life. Like I know I was to a middle class family. So I haven't had to struggle really,
Yeah.
right, in my life. Not really. I mean, sure, I've had some personal struggles, but socioeconomically, I haven't had to struggle
Yeah. Not like
because I
Dolores,
was
no.
born to, yeah, right. I was born in with a solid middle class foundation with good parents who loved me, who fed me when I needed feeding, right? Who provided me with a safe home and a good education, right? So I know that I have many advantages in life that many other people don't have. And so
Yeah.
for anyone to say that, oh, they were born wealthy, that doesn't mean anything. It's like, yeah, but why should a accident of birth differentiate people,
Mm.
you know?
But yeah, we're gone into a conversation now about how to fix the world.
Yeah. Okay. Quick. So we're actually coming up on the 3.5 hour mark, and I need to eat something.
Yeah, I'm
um,
starting to get there
so
too. Before we
so
find
so
the
yeah,
answers.
I'll wrap things up this way. We've discussed today. Our conversation, as it always does with the medieval buzz, has kind of ranged all over the place.
Mm,
But our basic tenet is that the medieval Europe from the first millennium into the second millennium was diverse
mm,
and more diverse than we probably realized, but that doesn't also mean that it was all one color. No, it was not one color. It was not all one color or the other, right? It
mm.
was an interesting and diverse place.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. I'm just thinking now. Rachel. You're doing your sewing, aren't you?
Tomorrow I'm going to a traditional indigo dyeing workshop
Ooh,
in
nice.
southwestern Korea. I'm not
Mm.
tomorrow. Wait, I'm sorry. Sorry, I've completely lost a day. I thought tomorrow was Sunday. Today's Friday. Guys, I work
Yes.
7 days a week. So I don't know. Yes, no, you're right. Tomorrow morning early will be my medieval sewing party. Yes, I'll be doing it earlier than usual because then I have a private dance lesson I'm teaching. Yes,
Mm.
thank you. Thank you, Philip, for reminding me of what I'm doing tomorrow. Yes, so tomorrow morning will be tomorrow morning Asia time, which is
Mm.
afternoon, evening in America and middle-ish of the night, late night in Europe. Yeah, I'll be doing my medieval sewing party.
Nice.
Are you doing any live streaming tomorrow on Saturday?
So tomorrow is a big one for myself, Mihal, and Dr. Owen O'Neill because you guys keep screaming to get Owen O'Neill over the channel. So we're going to have him up late tomorrow to cover, especially the O'Sullivans. You guys really, really are demanding the O'Sullivans to be covered tomorrow. But yeah, I'm doing a live stream tomorrow night. If you're in Asia, it is 9 a.m. in the morning. But for you guys, it's going to be in the middle of, nighttime anyway. A comfortable, reasonable time for America.
Right.
Unreasonable time for Ireland. But you guys over in the States wanted them to stay up late. So we are keeping Dr. Owen O'Neill late tomorrow. And we're going to be covering, the title is literally called Your Irish Clan and Family. Just jump in there, ask about your family. I know there's a few people going to be waiting for him because they want him to cover the O'Sullivan clan. And Dr. Owen O'Neill actually specializes in the O'Sullivan clan. So we will be covering that one for sure with Dr. Owen O'Neill tomorrow. And on top of that as well, on what was it called? Was it Sunday night for you guys? It's going to be Monday morning for me. I'm over on my Patreon. I am covering King John in Ireland. That's evil big bad King John from Robin Hood. I will be covering him over on my Patreon for about 2 hours. If you want to head on over there, it's about 20 quid a month over my Patreon. Well worth it as you get a class a month. Absolutely brilliant stuff. And on top of that as well, if you just want to support us as well, definitely, I think there's a subscription and send us money button somewhere on this as well.
There's
I think that's pretty
super
much
chat.
just.
Wait, Philip, Monday morning our time, aren't we doing the
Yeah,
16th
I think
century
that's.
Irish clothing?
Yeah, we
Right?
are. I think that's on. I think that's
That's
on
Monday.
Tuesday. It's either because I have the class on the Monday, so I think it's the Tuesday for us. It's the 8th anyway from this, so I'll get back to you on that one, Rich. Rachel's there giving me the dirty eye because they keep messing with the blade time
The
for
8th
this.
is Monday. It's on my calendar for Monday.
Yeah, let me quickly check that one on
Yeah.
Melissa's messages and stuff. Make sure that's perfectly set, and I'll get back to you in a few
Yeah.
minutes after this. Just make
Anyway,
sure
so
that's
make
squared.
sure if you are with me with the Creative Contessa, if you're one of my subscribers, make sure to subscribe to Irish Medieval History. And obviously, if you're an Irish Medieval History and you've enjoyed my part of the contribution today, check out the Creative Contessa. I do a lot of living history stuff, hands-on medieval material culture exploration, recreation. And of course, Philip and I just like to chat history
That's very,
on
very true.
a random basis.
Definitely.
Okay, everyone. Well, thank you all so much for participating, for hopefully hitting the thumbs up and the subscribe buttons, and for being part of our chat and part of the discussion. It's been I think I've had a really great time today. Haven't you, Philip?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Very, very good live stream. And yeah, we'll be back on again we can't do it obviously next week because we have Melissa Shields. So we'll be having Melissa Shields for your Monday night on the 8th. And I'll check the time for me and Rachel, see what time it is for us. And I think that's pretty much it. Squared away.
Okay, everyone. Until next time, stay creative.
See you.